Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. The first day of February 2020, and may it be a good month. I'm always glad to be here on the first day of the month. I normally, for the benefit of new listeners, always give a little bio on the first day of the month. First broadcast day of the month. Just happens to be the first day of the month today as well. So the first Monday of every month. I'll tell you very quickly a couple of times during the show. I'm Hugh Hewitt. You're listening to me because you want the news and you want analysis. 70% politics and government, 20% the news of the world, 10% the Cleveland Indians and Browns, and all other things, Ohio, and I add in other stuff as well. This is a morning news show. You get the news that you need, the analysis you want. For example, blockbuster snowstorm to strike New York and Philadelphia today. Stock futures climbing and silver's going through the roof. Amazon reports tomorrow it's going to go through the roof too. Hedge fund Melvin lost 50% of its money last week. Wow. Republican senators want a $600 billion stimulus deal, not the $2 billion that Joe Biden wants. They're going to meet. The coronavirus vaccine rollout is going great in England and is not going great in the United States. They had a coup in Burma. Gerrymandering is beginning, and the left is upset because the GOP is going to win. It looks like Governor Newsom is going to be recalled, meaning there's going to be a recall election on whether or not he's going to get to keep his job. And it looks like a guy named Chamath, he's a sort of a tech lefty, and Chamath is running he's a billionaire, so he's going to spend a lot of money. Kevin, the guy from San Diego, whose name I can never remember, he's going to run too. And then Rick Grinnell. No, it's not official from Rick yet, but we're going to be in favor of Rick because the government is completely collapsed in California. I'm in California for a couple of months until I get vaccinated. All my doctors are out here. I lived here from 1989 to 2016, and I come back in December and January, and we're staying longer. I normally teach the first semester at Chapman University Law School. Not teaching this year. I'll be back next January to teach, but by way of background, I am the son and grandson of Ohio. All four of my grandparents were born in Ashtabula. I was born and raised in Warren, Ohio. Catholic schools, first grade through 12. John F. Kennedy High School, go Eagles. Off to Harvard College, did pretty well there. Didn't get into Harvard Law School or Michigan Law School like I wanted to, so I drove across the country, went to work for David Eisenhower, and then quite unusually, for Richard Nixon, and worked closely with the president for 2 years. Finally got into Michigan Law School, went to Michigan Law School. Then clerked on the D.C. Circuit for two judges, Roger Robb and George McKinnon. Then went to the Department of Justice for two attorney generals, Bill Smith and Ed Meese. Then I went to the White House counsel's office for Fred Fielding and Dick Hauser. And Dick, go faster. Dick listened to the show in Florida. He's just been slowing down on that treadmill. Come on, Dick, pick it up. After that, I went over to the NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities, their top lawyer. After that, I went over to the Office of Personnel Management as their top lawyer, stuck around, became their deputy director, confirmed by the Senate, became the acting director because everybody left town when Reagan left, and I came back to California, built the Nixon Library, practiced law, and began my broadcast career in 1989. I've been on the air since 1990, television and radio. This show, the one you're listening to, is started on July the 1st, 2000. So we are in our 21st year, and I work, July 10th. Did I say July 10th? Thank you. And then that was the voice of Dwayne, who showed up. He started working here last week. He didn't quite know the rules yet. And we have been bringing you Sweet Reason for 20 years. And Dwayne may have been here longer than a week. I'm online at Hugh Hewitt. You ought to subscribe to my YouTube channel because I put the important stuff over there. So even if you miss something on the show, well, then you'll get the important stuff. You can follow me on Twitter like a couple 100,000 people do, and I put the important stuff over there as well. The key to the show is news, 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 news. If it's happening, I'll tell you about it. We were on the air for 9/11. I was on the air last year, first major news journalist in America, telling you the virus was coming, the virus was bad. Why? Because I read books. I'd read The Great Influenza. I knew it was coming. And I told you about it, but very few people listened. I supported Trump in 2020 and 2016, largely because of judges in the military. I don't think he should be impeached. It's unconstitutional. He's not the future of the party. Future of the party is, there are four sort of legatees of Donald Trump. Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, Ron DeSantis, and Kristi Noem. There are many other would-be presidents among the Republicans. The leader of the Republican Party is Mitch McConnell. He's like Apollo come down from Olympus among legislators. He's the smart guy. Do whatever he says. All right? That's my worldview. I'm married to the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and have been for 38 years. She's in charge. 3 wonderful kids. They've grown up. I'm 64, about to turn 65. Going to get my vaccine, then go back to D.C. and slug it out there. But I got to tell you, the big story of the morning, the big story of the morning is that, who's the guy from Kevin, what's his name? From the mayor of San Diego. He filed $1 million campaign chest yesterday because he's going to run for the recall. And yeah, Kevin Falconer. Honest to goodness, I do not know why. I've got a great audience. It's like a mental block. And I don't think Kevin can win. He's welcome to come on. I don't think this Chatham guy is going to win either. Because I think Rick Grinnell's going to win. But I'm going to be fair. I'm going to talk to them all. If they want to come have a debate, that's great. But the whole campaign ought to be this. Open the schools, house the homeless, cut the taxes. That's it. California is the most broken place. I've lived here since 1989, and I come back every year to teach in the spring. I live in Virginia now. I vote in Virginia. But I might come back here and re-register if Grinnell doesn't run. Grinnell runs, I won't run. And maybe I'll sit down with Pedrati and figure out that Falconer. Let me give you an example. I've been deeply immersed in the homeless issue this weekend for a variety of reasons that don't matter. Friends are involved. And it's an absolute crisis in California. You wouldn't believe it. You think Seattle's bad. You think San Francisco's bad. Take a look at L.A. There are 98,000 people on the streets in L.A. They got a 50-block center of town called Skid Row, which is, it's just deadly. 1,380 people died. Homeless people died. 3 people die a day in L.A. from exposure. 10 to 12% of those people just get hit by cars. They wander in, or they fall off bridges. So amid a $675 million deficit in L.A., city officials reported their earnings to open the books. L.A., 20,000 city employees in L.A., city employees, make $150,000 or more a year. Do you believe that? The Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department has 737 people, and it costs $55 million to run. I don't know, maybe they just sit around giving away money. Meanwhile, the homeless numbers are skyrocketing in the city and county of LA. The city blames the homeless on an influx of vagrants coming to the city. I don't think so. I think it's because there's no place to live. Because when they try and build a place to live, it costs $500,000 because it's the government. Honestly, Rick Grinnell, Kevin Falconer, the other guy, very easy campaign. Open the schools, house the homeless, cut the taxes. There's no reason California shouldn't be like Texas and Florida. It's a prettier state. It's the most beautiful place to live in the world. It is absolutely. People pay a geography tax to live here. And this morning, poor old New York and Philadelphia and Boston and all of Maine is going to be covered in 8 to 18 inches of snow. That only happens when you want to ski in California. Yeah, we got earthquakes. We got fires. But I'll retire here eventually. I'll come back from Virginia. Maybe. I might go somewhere else. I don't know. But I'm telling you, the appalling collapse of government at every level in California is because of state employee unions, which own the governor, which own the senators, which own the congressmen, which own the mayors, the state teachers union, the prison guards, the tribes and the casinos. It's a bought and paid for state. It's the most dysfunctional place in the United States. So we're going to have a recall election. And I kind of like Gavin Newsom, but My gosh, the French Laundry and this COVID rollout? Nah. I think we're going to have a new governor within 6 months. Stay tuned to
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Sally Pipes is my guest. Sally, do you think it's fair to say that the majority of Americans are really too afraid to have health care, have the private sector completely run health care? They don't trust the private sector enough to allow the private sector to run health care. They've been trained to fear the private sector and to embrace government to the point now where a discussion about unraveling government entanglement in health care we can't even have anymore?
Well, first of all, Larry, we don't have a complete private market in healthcare in this country, as you know.
Yeah.
50% of our healthcare is in the hands of government through Medicare, the program for our seniors, of which covers 65 million, Medicaid, the program for low-income people that covers now 70 million Americans, the CHIP program, the Veterans Administration. So we don't have a private market. But the progressive liberals, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the mainstream media, have just brainwashed the American people to say that the private sector cannot provide the kinds of alternatives and different types of plans for people. So people have been completely bamboozled. But it's interesting that, 59% of people polled say they support single payer, a complete government takeover of healthcare, which Bernie Sanders wants.
Right.
But when you ask the people, 160 million of them, well, which have private insurance in the employer market, if you ask them, well, you're going to have to pay much higher taxes, support goes down to 37%. If you tell them we're going to take away your private coverage and everybody's going to be in a government plan, support goes down to 26%. The problem is people don't understand what it means.
And Sally, the very same people that are complaining about the vaccination rollout are perfectly content to have the government take over everything. Sally.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So let's get right to it. This is a brand new book. How do we turn our seasons around? Because a lot of us are going through tough seasons. I'm going through a slump right now. I'm hitting 220, and that's just not right.
I remember when the media would write me off and say, well, he's having a first half of the season that's not so good, but they forgot I have 82 ball games left. You have a whole second half of your season. Okay, now we've been in the middle of a struggle crisis in this nation, and the season has to turn around. You have to go through a period. We might be going through like 8 months, 9 months, but at the end of the day, we walk into 2021, and you have to think about a fresh outlook. And I think that's what life is really all about. That's just the way God works. God works in some mysterious ways, and he works in your life to meet you right where you're at. And I think we all in the same boat today. And, for me to have a book that comes out, Turn Your Season Around, we're all going to have to turn our season around. How God transformed your life. He transformed your life if you meet him right where he's at. The thing about it is, what I laugh about, a lot of people say, well, how did you find Jesus? Well, Jesus has never been lost. We are the ones that were lost. We are the ones that have to turn our season around. And he just meets us right in the midst of our season, and he brings us to a greater understanding and the purpose of why he created us. And that's the cool thing about having a relationship with God.
The Bible is full of stories of, the Israelites up against the Red Sea. Their season was over. And then, God turned their season around.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, and his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a fear that the election or non-election, but the assumption.
By the way, one of my speakers has a little Back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on the first broadcast day of the month. As snow blocks all of you people from driving in the Northeast who are listening to me throughout New York. And I used to go through that stuff. I was there when Harvard closed in 1978. First time it ever, there was so much snow in Boston, people were jumping off of telephone poles into the drifts. The Great Whiteout. Then I had to close the government a couple of times when I was at OPM in the late 80s because I was the general counsel, and that was my call. I had to get to work. No one else went to work. I had to get to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, close the government, then get back. So I do not miss being there for the snowstorm today. But I've been in New York City. There's actually nothing more glorious than to be in downtown Manhattan when everything is shuttered because of the snow. One of my closest friends in the world and I, Mark Guerin, had dinner at an empty Manhattan restaurant. He was stuck there. I was stuck there in the middle of one of the... It's just glorious unless you have to actually work. Let me check the markets for you, brought to you by our friends at Birch Gold. I tell you every day you ought to have precious metals in your account. 10%, at least 10%. Your net worth should be in physical silver or gold. Now you can put that in a safety deposit box. You can roll it over in your IRA or 401k. Birch Gold will help you either way if you want to buy gold or silver. And silver's been shooting up today. I know that the Reddit people are after it, but it's just a long-term anti-inflationary hedge, runaway money. And if you want to buy gold, you go to hughgold.com, or if you want to get information on how do I move part of my stock IRA or my bond or my cash IRA or 401k into a physical metals, precious metals IRA, 401k, go to hughgold.com. Or, better yet, text my name, H-U-G-H, easiest name to remember in radio, no other Hughes running around, to the 474747 number. They'll send you the free, no obligation info kit. You can trust these folks. Gold is up at $1,864 an ounce, up almost 0.75% since Friday. Overseas, my gosh, they're having a big day in the markets overseas. Japan went up 1.5%. Hong Kong went up 2%. England's up almost 1%. Germany's up 1.25%. We don't know what's going to happen in the United States. The 10-year Treasury is still below 1.1%, which is remarkable. But as I said, Amazon reports tomorrow, and I expect the Redditors will go over there, or the Robinhood people will go over there pretty soon. Get out of the crazy stocks that aren't worth something. Get to the only stock I own is Amazon. Otherwise, just mutual funds. Not my gig. Not what I do. What I do this weekend is study homelessness in L.A. for a variety of reasons. And I just must tell you, it is beyond anyone's appalling imagination. You can think the worst thing you can think, and you aren't even close. They have got 50 square blocks now of Skid Row. Dwayne, you been to Skid Row anytime recently?
I actually was right by there a week ago.
And what'd you think?
It's worse.
It's hell.
It's hell. It's worse than it was.
And they had torrential rains on Thursday and Friday in L.A. L.A. normally gets about 3 inches of rain total in January. They had 2 inches or 1.76 inches on 2 days.
I started my radio career in '95 doing Christian radio, and we would do remotes at Union Rescue Mission, which is right in the middle of it, right?
You have a radio career?
I do.
Yes, I actually talked to the head of Union Rescue this weekend.
And I drove right by there and this last Sunday night, and it was pretty bad.
I think I'm going up there on Thursday. You want to go with me?
Why? You need protection?
No, I just don't know how the heck to get there. You know me and driving.
Yeah, I do know you and driving.
Yeah, so it's 50 square blocks. I ought to be able to hit it, right?
Your problem is not going to be finding it. Your problem is going to be getting out.
Well, I'm going to Union, so
okay.
They'll have a parking lot. But
okay.
I may talk to you about that if you've been up there before. Interesting stuff going on. Very, very interesting stuff going on. So anyway, back to the markets. Today is a good day to buy Amazon, but I always say that because I own Amazon. Today is a good day to buy gold, and I always say that because Birch Gold not only sponsors me, but it's always a good day to buy gold. HughGold.com. Text my name, Hugh, to 474747. Open those phones, Harley, 1-800-520-1234. Are we going to toss out Gavin Newsom, California? I know you're awake. You're sleepless because there are no jobs. I know you're awake.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, and his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a fear that the election or non-election, but the assumption of the presidency by President Biden, by Joe Biden, would just knock the wind out of conservative sails. Au contraire, it has given impetus to conservative sails. There are too many of us who love this country and its values. So that's, I needed you to know that. That's the way that one works. Yep. By the way, whatever your position on the hedge fund issue, you can't deny there is fight going on. There is the Reddit people who, what at the very least, what they did, and I'm not going to get into this in detail now, but what they did at the very least is show corruption in this company Robinhood, which is a, what are they called, brokerage house? I mean, that to manipulate stocks that way, you can't undo the hedge fund's profits?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Ron DeSantis is a Republican, so therefore has to be portrayed as some kind of a Yahoo. And Cuomo, who it was literally revealed yesterday, underreported COVID deaths in nursing homes by around 50%, he gets the victory lap. He gets the book deal. He gets the Emmy Award. These clowns, even when they're faced with horrific news, like the Attorney General in New York and her scathing report showing the disastrous response by Cuomo with his mandate that nursing homes must take COVID-19 infected people, which sent thousands and thousands of elderly people to their deaths? Well, here's CNN's take last night. Honest to goodness, this came down at like 8 o'clock at night. Headline by Chris Cillizza, CNN editor-at-large. Analysis. Andrew Cuomo's COVID-19 performance may have been less stellar than it seemed. May have been less stellar. They lied about how many people died in nursing homes because they were desperate to try to cover up Andrew Cuomo's botched response to COVID.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Verka.
Tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. Yes, the country with the largest military capabilities with nuclear weapons is now back to fighting the climate. Just as I explained to you on a prior program when I was asked to run an exercise with colonels and half-bird colonels from the Obama administration, they, too, half of the cohorts in that exercise, said that the climate was our biggest enemy. Well, here's the new Secretary of Defense. The department will immediately take appropriate policy actions to prioritize climate change considerations in our activities and risk assessments to mitigate this driver of insecurity. So I'm curious, does Secretary Austin, retired general, know what the biggest impact on the weather is? On the climate? Because it's not man-made. Whatever impact man has on the environment is
Welcome back, America. It was a beautiful Sunday yesterday. Gorgeous day in Southern California, except unless you're homeless, as the state explodes with homelessness as a combination of skyrocketing housing prices, addicted, substance abuse, and a variety of mental illness issues all swarm, as well as the inability of local government paralyzed at every level to respond, has created a human rights catastrophe. It's one of the reasons, along with the shutdown of business, the COVID rollout, which isn't a rollout, general mayhem at the state level, bankruptcy, high taxes, crashing services, collapsing streets. Everyone saw the picture of Route 1 that fell into the ocean. That Gavin Newsom is a nice enough guy, is going to face a recall. They're going to get enough signatures. That became clear this weekend. They're going to do it again. We did it with Arnold back in 2003, I think. What year was the recall, Dwayne?
It was around 03, 04, but it was Gray Davis, not Arnold.
Yeah, I know, but Arnold won. Arnold won the recall. Gray Davis got recalled and Arnold won.
Right.
And Twisted Sister, I did a number of rallies for Arnold, and I always joke with him. He totally left me hanging. He was never on time. Never, but he did make me state sommelier, so that's pretty cool. Paul in San Francisco, 1-800-520-1234. What are you doing up at this hour, Paul?
I'm listening to you.
Well, that's good, but I mean, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing?
Well, I was a bus driver for many years, so I had to get up very early to go to work.
Okay. So you're going to vote to recall Gavin?
Oh, absolutely.
What's the worst thing about him? Oh, you are?
Well, yeah. Because I don't trust anybody that doesn't have good judgment. And he went to that very high-end restaurant in Northern California,
the French Laundry in the Napa Valley.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't trust anybody that doesn't have better judgment than that.
So you're going to support Grinnell, Faulconer, or who?
Probably Mr. Faulconer. We need a change of view in California. We need to right the ship.
Why not Grinnell?
I have to look at Grinnell a little bit more, to be honest.
Okay, Chamath is this interesting lefty billionaire. You going to vote for a billionaire again?
Oh, yeah, that's just what we need, more a lefty billionaire. That'll really straighten out California.
That's exactly what I think. That's just what we need. We need someone who will not care that the public employee unions spend billions of dollars to denigrate them. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards Rick, but I'm open to being persuaded by Kevin. Because Rick does not care what ads say about him. He's absolutely fearless. And that's what the state needs. Because, I mean, how long you lived here, Paul?
I was born and raised here. My family's been in California 150 years.
No, so you're saying you just got here.
Yeah, well, most of the homeless here, by the way, are transients.
Where did you go to high school?
Abraham Lincoln and the school board here wanted
Not
to change the name.
anymore. No, that's
No,
gone.
they want to. Yeah. This is when you let the loony left have any power.
And how many homeless do you have in San Francisco?
Estimates are about 10,000, but who knows? It's a slowing puppet.
I went up there to see Hamilton with the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt, and we walked from our hotel down to a matinee, and it was Dodge the Homeless. It was the most everywhere, and I feel bad. You know, I'm a Christian. I believe each of these people are created in the image of God, but my goodness, doesn't the city do anything for them?
Well, we have a term here in San Francisco. It's called the homeless industry, and there's 70 organizations that help the homeless. Not to mention the hundreds of millions that come out of City Hall, and it just perpetuates the problem.
Well, in L.A., it's worse. Whatever is the problem in San Francisco, in L.A., it's worse. So,
a lot more people in L.A.
Yeah, I know, but at 98,000 homeless people, 3 die every day, falling off of bridges, overdoses. They had exposure cases on Friday night. One obviously mentally ill woman, middle-aged, stark naked, running down the middle of the street, screaming. Little old grandmothers under awning. I mean, little old grandmothers, 80-year-old grandmothers, 75-year-old grandmothers. People don't think of the homeless in the right way. It's a complete catastrophe, and Garcetti is paralyzed.
Absolutely, but people need addiction support. Just giving them a home is not going to solve their problems. They need addiction support to keep them out of that situation in the future.
Yeah, you need rapid. I was on a public health commission for 17 years. Rapid rehousing as soon as they go out on the street. Substance abuse counseling and a job. That's it. Got to get them a job. And Union Rescue Mission does a great work. Hey, Paul, thank you. You listen every morning?
As much as I can, yes. Thank you.
You know, I've got this enormous audience in the middle of the night in San Francisco. It's like the #1 rated show overnight in San Francisco. I don't know what all you people are doing. Yeah, I don't know what you people are doing up all night in San Francisco. Well, I do know what you're doing up all night. Go to bed.
Well, I can't tell my friends I listen to because I'll get castigated.
Well, that's okay. They just bring them over. I'll persuade them. I'm reasonable, right?
You certainly are, and you back up your opinions with facts.
There you go. Hey, Paul, thank you, buddy. Tim in Phoenix. Good morning, Tim. Hey, Tim. How are you? Tim, are you on mute? Hey, Ben. Hey, there he is. Hey, Tim. Good morning, Tim.
You were welcome to come to California.
Now, everything you said we missed because you were on mute.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
No, there was an article a little, I don't know, a month or two ago, I think. It was in the LA Times. And it said Gavin Newsom made a pitch out to any women seeking an abortion that they were welcome to do so in California. And he touted the willingness for that procedure to be done there in California. So I don't know if that weighs in on his recall effort. I don't know. If I lived there, I live in Phoenix, it certainly would not sit well with me.
Well, look, he's going to lose every Republican and every independent. The question is whether or not the Democrats are willing. This happens in Massachusetts, which is a deep blue state. Every few years, they elect a Republican governor like Charlie Baker or Mitt Romney or back in the day, Frank Sargent, to fix everything that the Democratic governors have broken. And I think that's going to happen. Thank you, Tim. 1-800-520-1234. California is one of 19 states that allow voters to remove state officials, and no reason is necessary. You just have to petition to put it on the requirement. The number is 12% of the voters in the last election. All right, then you get to recall them. So the magic number for Newsom's would-be recallers is 1,495,000. But a lot of people who sign those forms don't sign the right form, or they sign their wrong name, or they're not a registered voter. So you normally have to collect 20, 30% more. And they're going to make it. They're going to make it by March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. That became obvious this month, last January. So an election will be held later this year. Some people think as early as August, some people think as late as December, but it's going to happen. There's no limit on the number of candidates you can get on to replace an official on the recall ballot. And whoever gets the most votes wins. That's why I'm thinking about running. I lived here since 89 to 2016. I might come back. I'm here every winter to teach at Chapman University Fowler School of Law, and I could easily switch back to California. I voted here for 89 to 2016. I'm a Virginian now. Might run. Might do it. Hugh for governor. I'll run on a very, very, very modest platform. Very, very modest. Open the schools, open the businesses, house the homeless, cut the taxes. That's it. I'd also probably lay off half the people who work for the state. Police, fire, public safety, pretty much all we need. And people will call me up and they tell me we need this and we need that. And I know, but also I have one big rule in life about retirement systems. No public employee ought to make more in retirement than a retired colonel in any of the services of the United States. That's the max. If you didn't do 25 years in the United States Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy, captain in the Navy, colonel in the other three, then you shouldn't be paid more than those guys and gals because you didn't do the same thing. Kyle, Sacramento. Good morning, Kyle.
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm always good. I love my Sacramento audience. Always been a good audience for me.
I delivered you a cigar in Sacramento at a golf course after you showed up with Dennis Prager. Do you remember me?
I do, and Prager took it from me. Do you remember that?
Wait a minute. We brought two up to the
I know.
front.
He took them both. He took them both. Yeah, I left the dressing room. We were in the green room. We were talking about the cigar because you were very nice, and I came back and the cigar was gone. And Dennis said I wouldn't appreciate it.
Now, wait a minute, though. I don't know both of you very well at all. I just listen.
Well, you can trust me. You know you can't trust Prager. Honest to goodness, the guy it's a compulsion.
Right. Don't know. Well, and also, too, those were pretty good cigars.
That's it. He spotted that, and he said it would be wasted on me.
Well, and that's what I mean by Mr. Prager is usually pretty accurate.
Well, Mr. Prager is, first of all, he used Mr. He does not deserve it. It's just Prager. And Prager is thicky-fingered. So anyway, what do you think about this recall?
So Dennis and Hugh from now on from Kyle?
Yeah. It's Hugh and Prager.
I think the recall is probably needed.
Maybe we should run Dennis. What do you think?
Not a bad idea. Either that or his affiliate on that wonderful movie.
Yeah, Adam Carolla. I'm thinking maybe Dennis. Maybe Dennis. He wouldn't do anything. He'd be incapable of getting to the office. He cannot find his way in a building from the third floor to the fourth floor. But that's what the government needs, is paralysis.
Well, is our president governor in the office at all? Do you know where he lives? Do you know where he really...
I've only emailed with Gavin. Nice guy, family guy. I got nothing against him personally. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. People do not understand. This is worse than New York. Why can't we have a Ron DeSantis or a Greg, governor of Texas, Abbott? Why can't we have a Doug Ducey? Why can't we have a normal governor?
Right. You know who you're starting to sound like?
Who?
Oh, God, what was the movie that was written for Jack Nicholson, As Good as It Gets?
Oh, yeah.
Why can't I have a normal boyfriend? Remember her telling that to...
Yeah, and he said, and then she asked him, how do you know how we think? Well, I begin with a man and I remove all reason and perspective, yeah. All right, Kyle, be well, friend. Time for me to tell people about ReliefFactor.com. All right, I was sick last week, as you know. My voice was shot. I had some kind of influenza, wasn't COVID, tested negative. I'm fine. 5 miles on Saturday, 7 miles yesterday, but my hamstring's a little sore. So, ReliefFactor.com. Keep the lines open, Ben, just in case. Always keep the lines open. 1-800-520-1234. There are my 4 pills. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega. Or was that Harley who turned them up? Down the hatch they go. ReliefFactor.com if you're a new listener. I take it every day because these 4 supplements support the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. Try and do 100 miles a month, running or walking or trundling, as we call it. Running really doesn't apply to me now. I used to be fast. 3 hour, 13-minute marathon, 3 times. That's not bad. But I'm not fast anymore. I'm faster than Dwayne, but I'm not fast. But I am determined. And ReliefFactor.com keeps me in the game. Don't go anywhere, America. It's Hugh Hewitt.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
You guys are not going to believe what is going on in Illinois right now. Shocking that I have to say that. It's that bad, you guys. It's beyond your wildest belief.
I'm only peripherally aware of this, so please go ahead.
So recently, the Illinois State Board of Education approved this new rule for statewide curriculum mandates called the Culturally Responsive Teaching and Leading Standards. And right now, it's pending before the Illinois General Assembly and will be voted on February 16th to put into all curriculum for K through 12 schools in Illinois. But essentially, it's a new law that forces teachers to, in their words, embrace and encourage progressive viewpoints and perspectives. That's, fancy buzzwords, but what does that actually mean? Essentially, teachers are mandated by law to discuss current political controversies in class. They have to organize what they call action civics, which are field trips, student protests, lobbying expeditions on behalf of causes like gun control or the Green New Deal. They have to admit that there's unlimited numbers of genders and prioritize representation in the classroom.
This is in a state legislative bill.
And they're doing everything they can to bring this to the national level and essentially implement it as part of Common Core for all public schools nationwide. This is in addition to critical race theory, which is already a problem in Chicago.
Oh, it's terrible.
If you guys aren't familiar with the 1619 Project from the New York Times, that's among the most woke curriculum you could possibly imagine, but that's already been implemented to all Chicago public schools. So this is in addition to that reality.
This is statewide stuff, though.
And this would be statewide for the state of Illinois.
214. This would be in District 211. This would be all across the state of Illinois.
And you might ask, what happens if a teacher, a bold, brave teacher who's
tell me about
rational,
this.
says no? They get their teaching license taken away.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Dinesh, we've got a new president now. He's been in office for about 5 or 6 days. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't seem to be very much in control of the situation, but he has been very vigorous in signing a blizzard of executive orders, all of which seem to me thoroughly destructive. The business about climate change, the executive orders on oil leasing and fracking. Of course, he got rid of the 1776 Commission. So he's doing all the bad stuff we warned people that he would do. And at some point, you've got to ask, isn't this going to have a very bad effect on America? A little part of me wishes that it does, because I think we have to open the eyes of the American people to what moving in a socialist direction means. So, yes, I think we're off to a very bad start. It's what we warned about, and we're about to see the fruits of it.
Well, but Dinesh, we're healing. He's reaching out to the other side and urging everybody to heal. I recall when President Trump was campaigning, Dinesh, as you know, one of the big applause lines was lock her up, lock her up. One of the first things he did was to say, I'm not going to pursue her. Quote, she suffered enough, and he felt he wanted to concentrate on his own agenda. When is Biden going to pick up the phone?
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm joined now for the Yinzer Report by Salena Zito. Salena has a great new column on who the executive orders screwed last week. It's in the New York Post. I just tweeted it out. Good morning, Salena. How are you?
I'm fine. Burying snow, but doing fine.
How much snow hit Pittsburgh? Because normally you can't tell. Everything turns to black as it falls down through the coal dust.
Well, I can't tell because it's still dark out.
See, that's not actually, if the sun's up, it's just Pittsburgh.
Okay, it's not 1943, so. That would have been true in my parents' teenagehood.
So anyway, how much snow you got there?
I don't know, maybe like 6 or 8 inches.
Okay, that's not bad. Are schools closed? Did the kids get the free day?
Well, schools are closed in Pittsburgh, period.
Oh, my gosh. Really?
Yeah.
I thought Pittsburgh had common sense.
Well,
I thought, aren't people supposed to believe in the science?
So the city schools don't have a whole heck of a lot of sense, but the private schools and the suburban schools do have sense.
Okay, well, I want to get to your column because not many people wrote about the impact of this executive order. They know that the Keystone XL pipeline threw out union laborers, welders, pipe fitters, but you went beyond that. You went to the secondary effects. Tell people about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when the executive order happened, everyone understood these were going to directly hit the union jobs of the people that build the Keystone Pipeline, and/or the executive order on the banning of fracking on federal lands and waters. But you never really think about the jobs outside of the business. So I talked to a woman, Lori Cox, in South Dakota. Her and her husband just bought a hotel in September. It looks like something that would be in like a Gary Cooper movie, right? Like a 2-story hotel in the West. It's really charming.
The Stroppel Hotel in Midland, South Dakota.
Yeah, and so they have been booked every day since September. And on the day of the inauguration for Joe Biden, they were, as usual, every room was booked. It's 12 rooms, but, this is, it's not a Holiday Inn, but it's still, a nice size business. And they put a common room in there, and everyone's having like breakfast and coffee, business as usual. Within the pipeline community, people are very clannish. They're very community oriented. And by 4:00 in the afternoon, everyone had checked out long before they were supposed to be checked out. And she hasn't seen a person since then.
And that is one story that has been replicated all over the pipeline region. It runs from Canada to Texas. I mean, it is a devastating decision driven by theatrics. The indifference to these people is astonishing.
It really is. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Black Monday in Youngstown.
Oh, in Campbell,
yeah.
Ohio, when the steelworks closed. I was a kid, and they went to, and everything just shuttered. That's interesting, Salena. That's very interesting.
Barbershop, I mean, the impact was chilling in that area, and you and I both know we saw it from different sides of the state line. But you and I both know the economic impact wasn't just limited to the men and women that worked in the steel industry. It was the barbershops, it was the churches, it was the grocery stores.
It rolled down to my high school, my Catholic high school, which charged the outrageous amount of $300 a year. All of a sudden, the kids from Girard and Campbell couldn't afford to go there. They had to go to the public school.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are going to be the same impact. And what was interesting back then is they all drove from Youngstown in a bus with John Glenn to see Jimmy Carter, to talk to him about this, and he refused to see them.
You see, I do not understand Democrats. This is why they lost all the Democrats to Trump, and they're going to stay in the Republican Party who are working. They don't care about union jobs. And I mean, the union people just screamed their bloody head off, but it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. It's like we didn't learn a thing, and it wasn't all that long ago. But they didn't learn a thing. This is how they lost the working class. I have argued forever that Black Monday was an example of how they began to lose the working class, and they're just underlining it over and over again.
I hope you get up there and write a lot of these pieces, Salena, because you're one of the few people who actually went beyond the pipeline workers. I saw some videos on the pipeline workers, but this hotel, it's it's a write-off. I don't know what they're going to do, but God bless you for writing it. Salena, always a pleasure. Everything that Salena writes is at salenazito.com. You ought to subscribe, and you ought to come back here for hour two. Jake Sherman joins me. Don't go
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the information, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start today with prevention. And there's five supplements you can take. There's five lifestyle changes that you can do for prevention. Unfortunately, it's not told, but you know what? It works. And we started back in March. We had people make sure they elevate their own immune system by 3 key nutrients. And when they increase their vitamin D levels, they increase their zinc levels, they increase their glutathione levels and vitamin C levels, guess what? These people are more resistant and resilient to all viruses, including COVID. So if they did get the case, it would be reversed quickly, or they didn't get it at all. You know how much this cost? The average person, if the government would have given everybody a $100 kit, I believe that a lot of lives would have been saved with the word prevention. We don't hear that anywhere.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I'm just reading Coca-Cola, one of the biggest companies, has notified its law firms that it will not do business with them unless they are properly diversified. May I say that the aim of diversity over merit is not only injurious to any given profession, that's obvious to anybody, but it's very un-American. What it says to you is hard work doesn't pay, minority status pays. And that's the message of Coca-Cola. At this point, there are so many companies that are ruining the society that to boycott all of them would mean you would buy very few products. So it just came out, and I am very curious. My first question was, what does it even mean? What will they do? They'll have to submit reports, is that correct, to Coca-Cola? Coke sets diversity targets, financial penalties for outside lawyers. Coca-Cola said it will require diversity among law firms who bill it for work in the United States and reduce payments if they don't comply. The beverage giant's general counsel, a recent hire from the top ranks of Ford, disclosed the changes in a letter to law firms the company uses. Quite simply, we are no longer interested in discussing motivations, programs, or excuses for little to no progress. It's the results that we are demanding and will measure going forward, Bradley Gayton wrote.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
I often wonder if people have the ability to be objective enough to look at actual data and be truthful about things like the way Democrat-led states have responded to coronavirus and how Republican-led states have done so. For example, Florida. You know, I go a little bit back and forth between the state of Florida and New York. So I get to see how both states are responding to COVID with lockdowns, shutdowns, or some semblance of normalcy. There is a semblance of normalcy in Florida that there is not in New York. So it's really pretty stunning to look at the difference between the way the two states and the two communities really have responded to this pandemic. But have you looked at the data? Because to listen to the mainstream media, Ron DeSantis is just some wild, out of control lunatic who has totally botched Florida's coronavirus response. But Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, is Mother Teresa and has done everything perfectly, and the numbers are great, and everything's wonderful in New York. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. If you put on a chart the deaths per capita, the illness, the infection rate, the economy, if you lay it all on a chart and compare Florida to California and New York, it's not even a close call.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Verka.
Numbers matter. And think about the fact that they always tout the popular vote as opposed to the Electoral College. That's why every vote matters. Even if you're in California, you like yourself, Victor, in Maryland, every single vote matters. And this is why you never give up. It's not an excuse, but you're absolutely right from the historical perspective. Politics is cyclical. It truly is cyclical. You know, you get a Reagan because of a Carter. That's absolutely true. You get a Donald Trump because of what? Because of the betrayal of the American people by both sides of the political aisle. So the idea that simply because they managed to do what they did in November, that's it, we're done? Absolutely not. Think about one thing and one thing alone. How did they treat Donald Trump when he came down those escalators? And I don't mean just the left. I don't mean the late night talk show hosts, the quote unquote comedians. I mean the right, the establishment. Do you remember? And what happened? He trounced them all. Even after the Billy Bush tape, he was a force of nature. That's the attitude I want to see in all Americans. Be more like Donald Trump. Never, ever give up. Because that's what being an American is to me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So the World Economic Forum is meeting virtually. If you don't know what the World Economic Forum is, the World Economic Forum is a gathering of the richest, most well-connected people on the planet. They usually meet in Davos, Switzerland, which is very hard to get to. And in Davos, Switzerland, a lot of very big globalist ideas are introduced. And so this is talked about sometimes in conservative circles as the Davos agenda or as the kind of globalist agenda. This is their Super Bowl. This is where they do their planning.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt on this first day of February. It's Monday, so time to talk with Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News at 2:48 a.m. California time. I got my email from Punchbowl AM. It's regular like clockwork, gives me a rundown, helps me with show prep. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
I'm good, Hugh. I didn't realize you're in California today. I feel horrible for your wake up time.
No, I'm here December and January. I usually teach at Chapman Law the first quarter.
I remember that, yeah.
And so I'm taking the quarter off, but I'm going to stay out here till I get vaccinated because my doctors are out here. So it's fun. I don't mind doing 3 to 6 in the morning. Hey, Jake, you came up with the phrase Collins and Company. Now, I'm a big fan of Susan Collins. I like that. Would you give our audience a rundown of what's going on and your assessment of Collins and Company, which sounds like a morning show, their chance of pulling this off?
Well, listen, Hugh, a few things. So yesterday morning we got the email. We got word that Susan Collins and 9 other Republicans, including Mitt Romney, Tom Tillis, Lisa Murkowski, were proposing a scaled-back COVID relief package, scaled back in terms of its, relative size to the Biden plan, which is $2 trillion. This is roughly $600 billion. So they sent this letter to the White House, and I got a lot of flack from the left saying I shouldn't cover this. Did I ever cover anything like this when Democrats were in the minority? The answer is obviously yes. And people told me how stupid I was and how stupid Susan Collins was and all the Republicans who were with her. And almost immediately, within less than 24 hours, Joe Biden invited him to the White House. Now, let me just ask you, Hugh, for a second, and we say this in Punchbowl News this morning. Imagine if you were Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You're getting the president is meeting with Susan Collins before he meets with her, which is really something interesting. And before he meets with Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, anyone like that. What are the chances? Very low. I think.
But imagine, Jake, if you're a normal American who wants the government to do what it wants to do, and you see that Joe Biden, a creature of the Senate for 38 years, gets a call from his old friend Susan Collins, with whom he has spent hundreds of hours on the floor chatting about things, and their states are fairly close, Maine and Delaware, and she says, we ought to get together, Mr. President. He says, Susan, call me Joe, but let's get together, and they're going to talk. And I mean, isn't that the most normal thing? Wouldn't normal Americans
totally
say,
normal.
Good idea?
Go ahead. We're not in a normal time, Hugh. We're not in a normal time. And I think what Democrats don't realize in some is Joe Manchin is much closer to Susan Collins than he is to Bernie Sanders. And any bill that needs to get passed needs to have Joe Manchin's support. I don't care what people think about Joe Manchin or their distaste for him or whatever. Like this, you only have 50 votes in the Senate. So you need to have a product that bridges Joe Manchin with Bernie Sanders. And if you don't, you're not going to get anything passed.
And do you remember that Joe Biden was around when President Obama turned to Eric Cantor and said, I won, you lost. And that set off 8 years of partisan confrontation. If Joe Biden turns to Susan Collins and says, let's do a deal, that gives him, politically, it's dangerous for Republicans if he takes the center. It's very dangerous if he takes the center. And that's what he's got to be thinking, right?
Yeah, I think he's got to be thinking that, and I think he also just needs to be thinking, listen, it's relatively low risk because it's mostly theater if it doesn't work, and it doesn't mean that Democrats aren't going to go ahead with reconciliation, which only requires 51 votes in the Senate. But, so I think it's relatively low risk, and I think it's a smart move on his behalf, although it's going to infuriate the left.
If they go with reconciliation, every Democrat has a veto. Every Democrat gets whatever they want in that bill. It'll be the porkiest porky pie that has ever come out of the Senate.
I think that's right, of course. And to be honest with you, I think Democrats are misjudging this a little bit. It's not going to be as quick as they hope. It's not going to be as easy as they hope. It's going to take months. We're in February, so they need to do it this month and next month. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but I just don't think the Democrats have wrapped their heads around that too. And by the way, Hugh, talk about veto power in the Senate. How about in the House of Representatives, where Nancy Pelosi only has a 4 or 5 seat margin to get something through her chamber? So,
have they certified the New York and the Iowa seats yet, Jake?
Iowa, they have. I don't think they have New York. And remember, forget those two. You're going to have Marcia Fudge resigning. You had Cedric Richmond resign. You're going to have, I don't know where Deb Haaland, who's going to be Interior Secretary, or who's nominated to be Interior Secretary, I don't know where that seat stands. So I don't, this is I hate to say it, but this is very, very difficult for Democrats. And I don't know if they've recognized that yet. I've been told I'm stupid a million times, but the numbers are the numbers.
No, you're not. I think it's going to be 219 to 212. for at least 3 months during this reconciliation, which means they can lose 3 Democrats.
Which means AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar have, or whatever 3 Democrats that want it, they have veto power as well.
As do the 3 most normal or conservative Democrats, whoever they might be, the 3 in the center. So Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and Chris Coons in the Senate, everybody gets a veto. The bill will be 5,000 pages long.
Yeah, it becomes quite difficult when you are when you have high hopes and low numbers. That's kind of the only thing I can think about. Is
so
that
Hugh
high
Hewitt's
hopes and low numbers.
Hugh Hewitt's view is that they walk in there and they give the Defense Department a top line that is 10% higher than normal. They build ships in Maine and Mississippi and in Virginia, and they bring along a bunch of Republicans who are defense hawks like Mike Gallagher and Rob, the guy down in Virginia, and a bunch of others, Mike Waltz. My son works for Mike Waltz now, so I have to declare my conflict there. And they bring on the defense-minded Republican congressmen. They bring on Susan Collins and the defense Republicans in the Senate, and they have a deal.
Yeah, that could be possible, but listen, I think we're a long way from there, and I think that this meeting is kind of the real kickoff of whatever this process is, and we're losing a day today because it's a snow day and the House and Senate are out, although there's barely any snow on the ground. So, it's just every day counts, every vote counts, every move that any party makes counts.
Now, Jake, I got a question as a news startup. PunchbowlNews.com. Everyone needs to subscribe to it. Everyone needs to get it. And I know you're thinly staffed, but we're going to have a recall in California. It's going to be fascinating because it's first past the post with an unlimited number of candidates. I may come out here and run. I may re-register and just come out here and run for the fun of it. But Kevin Falconer, former mayor of San Diego, is in. John Cox, who lost last time, says he's going to get in. I hope he doesn't. Rick Grinnell's going to get in. We got billionaires running. We'll probably have Ariana Huffington. Are you going to try and cover? Because it's one of the wildest roller derbies in politics.
I think we'll try to cover to the extent that people in D.C. have a role in it. Unfortunately, since we're only 3 reporters, we don't have much leeway. I'm curious to see what Kevin McCarthy does. Does he put a bunch of money into, he has a good relationship with Gavin Newsom, although it's a bit competitive in the sense of, locker room competitive, like, the governor of California and probably the future Speaker of the House. But I do think that I'm curious whether he gets involved, and frankly, remember, Darrell Issa, as you know quite well, got involved in the last big recount. Does he put a bunch of money in to get rid of Newsom? So those are the kinds of things that we'll be focusing on, because our focus at the moment is D.C. because of just how small we are.
How has the launch gone? I want to remind everyone to subscribe at punchbowlnews.com. Are you ahead of your mark? Are you ahead of goal?
We beat our first year goal in the first 10 days. So yes, we've done really well. And I'll tell you, Hugh, for all the partisanship in news and in media, there are people who still just want to understand what people do and how they do it, from reporters who understand the process and who have been reporting fairly on the process for a long time. Although you and I might disagree on our outlook of certain situations, I think we
I trust your reporting. I trust your reporting.
Yeah.
And I remember in the days of Hotline, which cost $4,000 a year, it was in my contract when I agreed to do this show that they would get me a Hotline subscription. All I needed was the facts to do the show. Now I have Punchbowl News, and I do my show prep on the night before and the morning of, but Punchbowl News rolls in about 8 minutes before the show, and I can double check everything again to see if I've missed something. That's actually what every person in America ought to be doing, is making sure that they're getting news from every angle and from every platform, left, right, and center.
Well, I appreciate that, Hugh, and that's our goal is to report and write about the exercise of power, no matter who does it, how they do it, or why they do it. We're trying to explain that and not pass judgment on the policy, which infuriates both sides. But if I'm infuriating both sides, I guess I'm probably doing something right.
It's the right way to go. And that reminds me of one of my all-time 3 favorite interviews out of 25,000 is when Willie Brown leaned in on the set of Life and Times PBS 20 years ago and said, "Sometimes, Hugh, I must admit, I just simply enjoy the raw exercise of power." Gosh, I wish Willie was in charge of the state. Jake Sherman, thank you, my friend. Follow him at Jake Sherman on Twitter. Go to punchbowlnews.com and sign up. And you can call me at 1-800-520-1234. Snow day for D.C. because it's got 3 inches on the ground. Unbelievable. 1-800-520-1234. I'll do a market update. I've got the Washington Post Moscow reporter coming in at the bottom of the hour. But we also are going to have a recall in California. If you're waking up and understanding that, give me a buzz, 1-800.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Sally Pipes is my guest. Sally, do you think it's fair to say that the majority of Americans are really too afraid to have health care, have the private sector completely run health care? They don't trust the private sector enough to allow the private sector to run health care. They've been trained to fear the private sector and to embrace government to the point now where a discussion about unraveling government entanglement in health care we can't even have anymore?
Well, first of all, Larry, we don't have a complete private market in healthcare in this country, as you know.
Yeah.
50% of our healthcare is in the hands of government through Medicare, the program for our seniors, of which covers 65 million, Medicaid, the program for low-income people that covers now 70 million Americans, the CHIP program, the Veterans Administration. So we don't have a private market. But the progressive liberals, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the mainstream media, have just brainwashed the American people to say that the private sector cannot provide the kinds of alternatives and different types of plans for people. So people have been completely bamboozled. But it's interesting that, 59% of people polled say they support single payer, a complete government takeover of healthcare, which Bernie Sanders wants.
Right.
But when you ask the people, 160 million of them, well, which have private insurance in the employer market. If you ask them, well, you're going to have to pay much higher taxes, support goes down to 37%. If you tell them we're going to take away your private coverage and everybody's going to be in a government plan, support goes down to 26%. The problem is people don't understand what it means.
And Sally, the very same people that are complaining about the vaccination rollout are perfectly content to have the government take over everything. Sally.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So let's get right to it. This is a brand new book. How do we turn our seasons around? Because a lot of us are going through tough seasons. I'm going through a slump right now. I'm hitting 220, and that's just not right.
I remember when the media would write me off and say, well, he's having a first half of the season that's not so good, but they forgot I have 82 ball games left. You have a whole second half of your season. Okay, now we've been in the middle of a struggle crisis in this nation, and the season has to turn around. You have to go through a period. We might be going through like 8 months, 9 months, but at the end of the day, we walk into 2021, and you have to think about a fresh outlook. And I think that's what life is really all about. That's just the way God works. God works in some mysterious ways, and he works in your life to meet you right where you're at. And I think we all in the same boat today. And, for me to have a book that comes out, Turn Your Season Around, we're all going to have to turn our season around. How God transformed your life. He transformed your life if you meet him right where he's at. The thing about it is, what I laugh about, a lot of people say, well, how did you find Jesus? Well, Jesus has never been lost. We are the ones that were lost. We are the ones that have to turn our season around. And he just meets us right in the midst of our season, and he brings us to a greater understanding and the purpose of why he created us. And that's the cool thing about having a relationship with God.
The Bible is full of stories of, the Israelites up against the Red Sea. Their season was over. And then, God turned their season around.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, And his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Just in case you didn't hear the most infamous quote of 2021, and it's going to stay that way, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, cut number 2.
A third of all deaths in this nation are from nursing homes. New York State, we're only about 28% only, but we're below the national average in number of deaths in nursing homes. But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died. And I dealt with the loss of my father. The pain is so incredible and inexplicable, and why. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
They died. Who cares? They died. That, if he ever runs for re-election, is going to play again and again. Never say they died. Who cares? It's like Hillary Clinton in the Benghazi hearing. What does it matter? Never, ever do that. It's just a word to the wise. Let me bring you a market update brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. If you're a new listener, that's where you get your mortgage. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. Now, Robinhood is an app. It's an app that debuted last year and quickly got 3 million users, the average age of which is only 31. Now, it allows for trading in marginal share, meaning you can get a fraction of Amazon. Amazon costs, what's it trading at? $3,200. And it's probably going to, if I always say I'm not a prophet nor the son of the prophet, the only stock I own is Amazon. I own it because I think it's going to $5,000. I just think it's buying the market. And so, and otherwise, I leave it to the mutual funds to do that business. Everything else is in mutual funds because I'm not smart enough. But I know if I want to know what young people are buying as they look over a lifetime of investing, because I know what I did at 30, buy life insurance for my family and start doing dollar average investment, meaning dollar every month, put the same amount into the same stocks and you will average dollar cost average investing or whatever it's called. That's the way to go. And so what do young people think are the stocks that will get them from age 31? And by the way, the retirement age by the time they get up there is going to be 75. Everyone's going to live that long, and no matter, unless Andrew Cuomo is governor everywhere. And so what do the young people think? They published a list of their 50 largest stock holdings on Motley Fool. I find this fascinating. Number 1, Apple. Then Tesla, NIO, General Electric, Ford Motor, Microsoft, Amazon, Walt Disney. Those are all very conventional. Very conventional. Young people are not dumb. Then we get American Airlines, which is a play. That's one of the Reddit plays. Because, I mean, right now nobody knows when the airlines are going to make any money again. Then we get Plug Power, which is a youngster's way of looking forward to a green revolution. Then we get Pfizer. Then we get Aurora Cannabis. Now, I'm not going to own any cannabis stocks. I'm not. I think it's a disaster for the country and that next generation, but young people, I understand. Then we get Delta and Carnival. Then we get Sundial Growers. Then we get GoPro, which is really dumb. Then we get AMC Entertainment. So those are the top 20. And Moderna's in there and Alibaba's in there in the top 20 as well. GameStop's only 23, the one that just drove people crazy. Coca-Cola's on here, Twitter, AT&T, Canopy Growth. So there's a lot of dope, there's a lot of tech, and there's a lot of tradition. It's a very interesting list. Young people are not crazy. Some of them are trading irresponsibly, but some of them are buying Apple and Amazon and AT&T. So the good news is they're not crazy. The good news is that they are capitalists, and they will keep America a free market country despite AOC. Coming right back with a report from Moscow, America. The Washington Post lead reporter there joins me after this. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, and his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a fear that the election or non-election, but the assumption of the presidency by President Biden, by Joe Biden, would just knock the wind out of conservative sails. Au contraire, it has given impetus to conservative sails. There are too many of us who love this country and its values. So that's, I needed you to know that. That's the way that one works. Yep. By the way, whatever your position on the hedge fund issue, you can't deny there is fight going on. There is the Reddit people who, what at the very least, what they did, and I'm not going to get into this in detail now, but what they did at the very least is show corruption in this company Robinhood, which is a, what are they called, brokerage house? I mean, that to manipulate stocks that way, you can't undo the hedge fund's profits?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Ron DeSantis is a Republican, so therefore has to be portrayed as some kind of a yahoo. And Cuomo, who it was literally revealed yesterday, underreported COVID deaths in nursing homes by around 50%, he gets the victory lap. He gets the book deal. He gets the Emmy Award. These clowns, even when they're faced with horrific news, like the Attorney General in New York and her scathing report showing the disastrous response by Cuomo with his mandate that nursing homes must take COVID-19 infected people, which sent thousands and thousands of elderly people to their deaths. Well, here's CNN's take last night. Honest to goodness, this came down at like 8 o'clock at night. Headline by Chris Cillizza, CNN editor-at-large. Analysis. Andrew Cuomo's COVID-19 performance may have been less stellar than it seemed. May have been less stellar. They lied about how many people died in nursing homes because they were desperate to try to cover up Andrew Cuomo's botched response to COVID.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Verka.
tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. Yes, the country with the largest military capabilities with nuclear weapons is now back to fighting the climate. Just as I explained to you on a prior program when I was asked to run an exercise with colonels and half-bird colonels from the Obama administration, they too, half of the cohorts in that exercise, said that the climate was our biggest enemy. Well, here's the new Secretary of Defense. The department will immediately take appropriate policy actions to prioritize climate change considerations in our activities and risk assessments to mitigate this driver of insecurity. So I'm curious, does Secretary Austin, retired general, know what the biggest impact on the weather is, on the climate? Because it's not man-made. Whatever impact man has on the environment is
Welcome back, America. Good morning to you on the first day of February. It's Hugh Hewitt. I am so happy to welcome Isabelle Khurshudyan. She is in Moscow. She is the Washington Post foreign correspondent in Moscow. One of the more interesting colleagues at the Post because she covered the Caps. She's a sports writer, and now she's covering Moscow. That is the strangest career path I've ever seen. Isabelle, welcome. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I think it's a strange career path, too, for what it's worth.
Why? Do you go to the Moscow hockey games, too?
No, I haven't been to a single one, honestly.
Well, I am glad you're there. Give us the scoop on the demonstrations, the arrests, and what it means. And just assume, I've got Pittsburgh among my affiliates, so assume that those people don't know anything, and the rest of the country needs to be filled in.
Sure. Well, Alexei Navalny, who was poisoned in August and has said Vladimir Putin was responsible for that poisoning, came back to Russia on January 17th, was immediately arrested, and kind of as expected, this has, triggered outrage here. The Kremlin has, of course, denied that this is, that they tried to kill him, that they, are arresting him for politically motivated reasons. But this is kind of coming on the heels of more general unhappiness with the Russian government, and kind of his treatment has triggered, now 2 straight weekends of mass protests. And it's not just Moscow, it's not just St. Petersburg. Russia's a really big country, and this is something that has kind of surprisingly united it. It's, people in Vladivostok, which is all the way by Korea, or people in the center of the country that, they feel like their living conditions are poor, that, their government officials are corrupt, and they're kind of rallying behind Navalny's message of that.
Now, Isabelle, Navalny is being held where? Do we know?
Yes, he's at a pretrial detention site. It's kind of notorious for being, kind of a rough place, even by detention site standards. And, he's going to be in court tomorrow for, this allegation or this charge that he violated the terms of his probation. When did he violate the terms of his probation? Apparently when he was recovering from the poisoning in Germany these past 5 months. So what they're alleging is that they want to turn what his suspended sentence was, which was 3.5 years, into real prison time.
So, Isabelle Khurshudyan, what does Navalny represent? Where did he come from? Does he intend to challenge Putin at the next presidential election? What kind of a threat is he to the man in the Kremlin?
Yeah, I don't think many Russians see him as a viable political alternative for them. I don't even know if that many Russians really like his political views. I think more what he represents is sort of this fight against corruption. He's actually really made a name for himself as, an anti-corruption activist. He's a really kind of smart investigative journalist, I would say. He puts out these videos kind of exposing graft. His most recent one got over 100 million views, and it was about how Putin allegedly has this Black Sea palace worth $1 billion that was built for him through a complex slush fund and has golden toilet brushes worth $850, purchased for it. So, I mean, that's where he becomes a threat, is he kind of targets Putin and his inner circle and really hits them where it hurts, which is kind of showing the financial discrepancies in this country and kind of disillusioning, average Russian people who are struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah, over the years, I've talked, Isabelle, with various foreign correspondents like David Kirkpatrick of the New York Times and John Fisher Burns of the New York Times and your colleague David Ignatius and other people like that. And revolutions are never possible until they have happened. So that, the Arab Spring, no one thought Mubarak was going to go until he was gone. The Ukrainian Green Revolution, the Beirut Green Revolution, the Cedar Revolution. Is that the sort of level of unrest that we see, or is it blowing off steam?
I think it's still too soon to think that what we're seeing now is going to be something that could really topple Putin. I mean, it just seems, like you're saying, it seems right now impossible. But again, Belarus, I thought that revolution was going to succeed. It went on and on and on. It's still going. And it hasn't kind of resulted in a change of power there yet. So it's really hard to tell. I think what more kind of where we might see the impact is in September elections. That's parliamentary elections. Vladimir Putin's United Russia Party usually kind of runs the table in those. I think, this is building where we might be able to see some kind of turnover there potentially. But it's hard because, I don't think anybody's ever thought that Russia's elections were super free and fair to begin with anyway.
No, I actually don't think electoral change is possible in Russia until Putin is dead. But I always think there's a revolutionary moment that no one ever sees coming until it was obvious that it was going to happen. And so I go back to now the question of January and February. Most revolutions occur in the summertime. Because honestly, what was the temperature there this weekend?
Yeah, it was snowing in Moscow. The crazier thing, though, is, people were out in Yakutsk, which is literally the coldest city in the world, in 45 below zero. You saw these images in certain parts where protesters were literally running across frozen rivers and ponds to get away from riot police. So, they're protesting even in the cold weather, but I did wonder Navalny's timing with why he came back now and not more so in the summer when it certainly would have been a little bit easier to protest.
Yeah, if the Third Reich couldn't get to Moscow in the winter, or they got there and it wasn't, it's pretty tough to imagine a people's revolt in the winter. My next question is, what happened to the demonstrators? Were there mass arrests? Are they being kept at stadia, as happens occasionally in the United States when there are mass arrests? Have they vanished into secret prisons? What happened to them?
Yeah, we saw a lot of, this was kind of an impressive amount of detentions, 5,000 in one day for what was a smaller turnout than the week before. In most cases, people, are just kind of, sorry about that. Most cases, people are just, released almost right away. Maybe after a couple hours. Sometimes they're fined. Navalny's wife was one of the people picked up. She was released later in the evening and then fined like $250 today. But sometimes, there are criminal cases opened. I think last weekend there were like 20 or so. Really, this is a tactic for them to kind of disperse the protests in the moment. Just pick up as many people and then let them go later. And what I think was more shocking was kind of the violent means that they were doing this in. There were tasers. There were some reports of maybe tear gas being used in St. Petersburg. We saw police kind of beating, protesters with batons. So I think it was more the brutal kind of tactics.
Now, you quoted an 18-year-old, Masha Olyanova. I'm worried about my future. They don't allow people to just walk. They don't allow people to express their opinion. It's very sad that our authorities have reached a stage where they have resorted to such strict measures. They are afraid that they'll lose power and they will have to live in this poor country, which they have robbed. Now, 18-year-olds going on the record, maybe not the smartest thing in the world, but also an indication that they are desperate. Is this because, in your opinion, Isabelle, that they don't have a future?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think this is a very youthful movement as well. You're seeing a lot of young people in these crowds, and, they're kind of rallying behind Navalny's "don't be afraid," kind of speeches. I mean, he showed his fearlessness by, coming back here, even though he knew he was going to be arrested, coming back to the place that he says tried to kill him. So I think you're seeing just a lot of kind of young people, 18-year-olds, people in their 20s, go to these protests and kind of show the same kind of fearlessness. I mean, they're facing major consequences at their universities, at their, schools, for even going to this, especially, if their name gets out. But, people are kind of just, I think, fed up, but they're also, really maybe inspired by kind of his fearlessness and all of this as well.
I'm talking with the Washington Post, Isabelle Khurshudyan. Isabelle, I'm curious, how do you like Moscow? You're a South Carolinian, or at least you're a Gamecock, and then you live in Virginia, and now you're in Moscow. I mean, how do you like this gig?
Yeah, I love it. My parents were ex-Soviets. They were born.
Oh.
Yeah, so I speak, I would say above average Russian. So I've loved it. Moscow is a beautiful city. I find it really underrated. I think Russian people in general are really great. It's unfortunate that their government is not so great.
And last question, another story by your colleague Robin Dixon from the day earlier said the Russian messaging battle is social media for the opponents of Putin, Putin allies on plodding along on state TV. Is that changing as Putin simply not kept up online?
Yeah, I mean, he personally is not, I think he said he doesn't, I think he still uses an outdated form of Windows or something like that. But, I would say the Kremlin itself, their propaganda machine, they certainly, try to have a footprint online. They're really kind of big with these Telegram channels. It's a messaging app that is becoming popular in the United States, but it's really, really big here. But I think Navalny certainly has the edge with things like YouTube, with, even the way his kind of team sort of makes jokes on Twitter. This youth movement is really big on TikTok, all these kind of young people who are supporting him. So at the end of the day, the big thing about the internet is it's open. You can find whatever you want there. You can find options for, what opinions you want to read about. Whereas state TV, you don't have a choice. It is what it is. It's going to be, the first couple channels, and they're going to give you a very slanted version of events where they barely even cover these protests. You would think nobody's on the street. So, I think that's where kind of the internet and how, big that is, and social media and YouTube. I think that's where Navalny is able to really reach people.
Interesting. Isabelle Khurshudyan, keep us posted. I love reading your stuff. It's great that you're there, and it's great that you're reporting this way. Thank you for joining me from Moscow. I appreciate it very much. A Washington Post reporter. You ought to follow her on Twitter, Khurshudyan, which is spelled Khurshudyan. So IKHUR, and it will show up. Then you'll be able to follow her. I also got to tell you that one of my favorite things is when I get to talk to foreign correspondents who are new to our country. It's just so much fun. It just is. Hey, let me tell you, and she's right about YouTube, by the way. If you are not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go and subscribe. That way you'll get interviews like that one and monologues like the one I gave on the recall sent directly to you. You won't have to be reminded, and you need to know stuff. So get smart, get a subscription to my YouTube channel, and get Relief Factor. Great sponsor of the show. I took in the first hour. I remind you about in hours 2 and 3. Why? Because I'm in California, so I am able to be out for 7 miles yesterday, 5 miles on Saturday. I was sick all last week indoors. Not COVID, just a bug. Feeling better. Finally got back out. Gorgeous. I mean, just beautiful. It's too bad the state's falling apart. But it's a beautiful place to be outdoors. If you're doing any exercise indoor, you got a Peloton for Christmas. If you're hurting, if you're sore, ReliefFactor.com is for you. The 4 supplements you should be taking every single day. $19.95 gets you started. Go to ReliefFactor.com. Come right back after the break on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Dinesh, we've got a new president now. He's been in office for about 5 or 6 days. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't seem to be very much in control of the situation, but he has been very vigorous in signing a blizzard of executive orders, all of which seem to me thoroughly destructive. The business about climate change, the executive orders on oil leasing and fracking. Of course, he got rid of the 1776 Commission. So he's doing all the bad stuff we warned people that he would do. And at some point, you've got to ask, isn't this going to have a very bad effect on America? A little part of me wishes that it does, because I think we have to open the eyes of the American people to what moving in a socialist direction means. So, yes, I think we're off to a very bad start. It's what we warned about, and we're about to see the fruits of it.
Well, but Dinesh, we're healing. He's reaching out to the other side and urging everybody to heal. I recall when President Trump was campaigning, Dinesh, as you know, one of the big applause lines was lock her up, lock her up. One of the first things he did was to say, I'm not going to pursue her. Quote, she suffered enough, and he felt he wanted to concentrate on his own agenda. When is Biden going to pick up the phone, Dinesh, and call Schumer and call Pelosi and say, call off the dogs? This is an idiotic trial, and we shouldn't be wasting the American people's time with it.
Well, the very fact that they're pushing ahead with it, I mean, it looks like they may have up to 5 Republican votes, not even necessarily 5 for conviction, 5 just for hearing it. And the other 45 would have thrown it straight out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the information, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start today with prevention. And there's 5 supplements you can take. There's 5 lifestyle changes that you can do for prevention. Unfortunately, it's not told, but you know what? It works. And we started back in March. We had people make sure they elevate their own immune system by 3 key nutrients. And when they increase their vitamin D levels, they increase their zinc levels, they increase their glutathione levels and vitamin C levels, guess what? These people are more resistant and resilient to all viruses.
Welcome back, America. How are you? I love the fact that they have a former hockey reporter reporting from Washington, D.C. I just think that is that's a very smart use of resources. Now, let me then go on my traditional rant. Sports writers should not write about politics. The estimable Terry Pluto, who's my favorite sports writer in America, doesn't touch it. Because, in Terry's view, sports is common ground for everyone, regardless of their political views. And that doesn't mean sports fans don't have political views. They do. And it doesn't mean that sports fans won't argue with other sports fans about their political views, because it happens. And it doesn't mean that sports fans will not argue with each other, period. I mean, if any other Browns fan says we need to trade Baker Mayfield, I'm going to go through the computer and grab them by the neck. Baker Mayfield is the best thing to happen to Cleveland since Bernie Kosar. And the idea that there are some grumpy Browns fans who want to trade him for Deshaun Watson is about as crazy can get. But sports ought to remain, and is largely, the place where people of deeply divided political, religious, personal points of view can, if they speak sports, talk to each other. Now, there are some people like Kurt Schlichter who lack the sports gene. My friend Mark Germain used to say that, Mr. KFI and then Mr. KABC said, I lack the sports gene. He just didn't care. And Dwayne cares, but he doesn't know anything. And so I'm one of those rare reporters who know everything about sports and politics and the law. And so my opinions matter and are dispositive on all these issues, such as Baker Mayfield. And I know reporters like Douglas Mayers over at the Cleveland Plain Dealer who are also very smart across all categories. And Doug wrote a great piece, which I think was dispositive, that the Browns are the third best team in football this year in the Cleveland.com section this past weekend. But unless you shift over, sports writers like Isabelle did, from the Washington Caps to the Moscow political scene, don't write about politics online. Don't ruin it for me. Don't ruin it for everyone. Don't do it. Stay away. Sports is supposed to be a sanctuary from politics. It's not supposed to be more Trump Biden, more Gavin Newsom, Rick Grinnell, more legalize dope, don't legalize dope, more choice of light. No, it's just not supposed to be that. Please, this is my appeal to sports writers. If you're going to do it, do what Isabelle did. Go from covering the Washington Caps and go find the tyrant Ginsburg, who runs the Post newsroom along with Marty Barron, and put in for a transfer. But don't screw up the sports pages. Please. Please don't screw up the sports pages. It is my appeal to you. All right, coming back with, I got the tough names today. Len Khodorkovsky is coming back. Chief Marketing Officer, Senior Advisor in the Trump administration at State. Joined by our old friend Victoria Coates. They've got a new piece out that suggests maybe that the Abraham Accords could be followed up by something as impressive, as breathtaking. The Cyrus Accords. We'll tell you about what that means after the break. I'll also be joined by Joni Ernst, great senator from Iowa. This impeachment trial is a joke, by the way, and it starts next week. President's legal team quit. Apparently, the president wants to argue the facts of the election, which is not a good legal strategy, and I wouldn't do it either, because he lost the election, and the Senate isn't going to hear him. The president should send in a one-line letter. These proceedings are unconstitutional, and refuse to participate. Not a very difficult strategy. They are unconstitutional. And it appears that at least 45 senators agree with that. And it requires 67 senators to even theoretically punish him further than the removal, which is not possible. So all the stories that are about his legal team, that's all just keeping the Trump machine. They're trying desperately in elite media to keep the Trump machine going. It brought them readers. And now they're all having withdrawals. They're like addicts going through withdrawals. And they ought to move on. There are other stories There are important stuff going on. The impeachment story does not interest people outside of the Beltway in Manhattan, at Hollywood. Trump haters, Trump derangement syndrome sufferers. It just does not interest people. Go find some real news. Like the Abraham Accords. I have a new post column up right now on the Abraham Accords and the F-35s for UAE. Go read that. Or go read the sports page. But please, enough of impeachment. People are bored. 1-800-520-1234.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Ron DeSantis is a Republican, so therefore has to be portrayed as some kind of a yahoo. And Cuomo, who it was literally revealed yesterday, underreported COVID deaths in nursing homes by around 50%, he gets the victory lap. He gets the book deal. He gets the Emmy Award. These clowns, even when they're faced with horrific news like the Attorney General in New York and her scathing report showing the disastrous response by Cuomo with his mandate that nursing homes must take COVID-19 infected people, which sent thousands and thousands of elderly people to their deaths? Well, here's CNN's take last night. Honest to goodness, this came down at like 8 o'clock at night. Headline by Chris Cillizza, CNN editor-at-large. Analysis. Andrew Cuomo's COVID-19 performance may have been less stellar than it seemed. May have been less stellar. They lied about how many people died in nursing homes because they were desperate to try to cover up Andrew Cuomo's botched response to COVID.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Verka.
Tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. Yes, the country with the largest military capabilities with nuclear weapons is now back to fighting the climate. Just as I explained to you on a prior program when I was asked to run an exercise with colonels and half-bird colonels from the Obama administration, they too, half of the cohorts in that exercise, said that the climate was our biggest enemy. Well, here's the new Secretary of Defense. The department will immediately take appropriate policy actions to prioritize climate change considerations in our activities and risk assessments to mitigate this driver of insecurity. So I'm curious, does Secretary Austin, retired general, know what the biggest impact on the weather is? On the climate? Because it's not man-made. Whatever impact man has on the environment is negligible, truly fractal, in proportion to the effect that a large yellow fireball in the sky has on our climate. Yes, the sun, along with the moon a little bit, but mostly the sun, has a larger effect on our environment than anything humans or flatulent cows have.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You guys are not going to believe what is going on in Illinois right now. Shocking that I have to say that. It's that bad, you guys. It's beyond your wildest belief.
I'm only like peripherally aware of this, so please go ahead.
So recently, the Illinois State Board of Education approved this new rule for statewide curriculum mandates called the Culturally Responsive Teaching and Leading Standards. And right now, it's pending before the Illinois General Assembly and will be voted on February 16th to put into all curriculum for K through 12 schools in Illinois. But essentially, it's a new law that forces teachers to, in their words, embrace and encourage progressive viewpoints and perspectives. That's, fancy buzzwords, but what does that actually mean? Essentially, teachers are mandated by law to discuss current political controversies in class. They have to organize what they call action civics, which are field trips, student protests, lobbying expeditions on behalf of causes like gun control or the Green New Deal. They have to admit that there's unlimited numbers of genders and prioritize representation in the classroom.
This is in a state legislative bill.
State legislative bill. And they're doing everything they can to bring this to the national level and essentially implement it as part of Common Core for all public schools nationwide. This is in addition to critical race theory, which is already a problem in Chicago.
Oh, it's terrible.
If you guys aren't familiar with the 1619 Project from the New York Times, that's among the most woke curriculum you could possibly imagine. But that's already been implemented to all Chicago public schools. So this is in addition to that reality.
This is statewide stuff, though.
And this would be statewide for the state of Illinois.
214. This would be in District 211. This would be all across the state of Illinois.
And you might ask, what happens if a teacher, a bold, brave teacher
Yes,
who's
tell me about
rational,
this.
says no? They get their teaching license taken away.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Dinesh, we've got a new president now. He's been in office for about 5 or 6 days. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't seem to be very much in control of the situation, but he has been very vigorous in signing a blizzard of executive orders, all of which seem to me thoroughly destructive. The business about climate change, the executive orders on oil leasing and fracking. Of course, he got rid of the 1776 Commission. So he's doing all the bad stuff we warned people that he would do. And at some point, you've got to ask, isn't this going to have a very bad effect on America? A little part of me wishes that it does, because I think we have to open the eyes of the American people to what moving in a socialist direction means. So, yes, I think we're off to a very bad start. It's what we warned about, and we're about to see the fruits of it.
Well, but Dinesh, we're healing. He's reaching out to the other side and urging everybody to heal. I recall when President Trump was campaigning, Dinesh, as you know, one of the big applause lines was lock her up, lock her up. One of the first things he did was to say, I'm not going to pursue her. Quote, she suffered enough, and he felt he wanted to concentrate on his own agenda. When is Biden going to pick up the phone, Dinesh, and call Schumer and call Pelosi and say, call off the dogs? This is an idiotic trial, and we shouldn't be wasting the American people's time with it.
Well, the very fact that they're pushing ahead with it, I mean, it looks like they may have up to 5 Republican votes, not even necessarily 5 for conviction, 5 just for hearing it. And the other 45 would have thrown it straight out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start.
Morning, Gloria and Erica. Bonjour. Hi, candidates Hugh Hewitt. And now for something completely different. I've got two friends who are alums of Team Trump. Did great work on behalf of the national security of the United States. Len Khodorkovsky was on a couple of weeks ago, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Digital Strategy. He was the senior advisor to the U.S. Special Representative to Iran. And my old friend Victoria Coates is a senior fellow now at the Center for Security Policy, former Deputy National Security Advisor for the Middle East and North African Affairs. Welcome you both. Victoria, would you see Frank Gaffney today and ask him why he never comes on my radio show anymore?
Good morning, Hugh. It's really good to hear your voice again. And yes, I'll be talking to Frank later, and I will definitely pass along the message.
Just tell him I wonder why he disappeared. And Len, good to have you back. Len, I'm going to let you take the first at bat. When I read this piece in the Jerusalem Post about peace between Iran and Israel being inevitable, I thought, have my friends lost their mind? What are you thinking here?
Well, good morning, Hugh. Thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it. Well, so the crux of the matter is, as everyone has seen, that there's peace breaking out in the Middle East. We could not have foreseen this in 70 years, and all of a sudden, in the span of a few months, Israel and its Arab neighbors are making peace. And what Victoria and I have concluded is that there's no reason why the Iranian people should be excluded from this peace. The current regime that's in charge in Iran does not represent the Iranian people, and left to historical, left to historical trends, the people of Israel and the people of Iran would be in peace. And I would just say, like, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, the arc of moral justice bends towards the arc of moral universe bends toward justice. I would say the mark of moral universe bends towards freedom. And so the people of Iran will eventually be free to make peace with people of Israel.
Now, Victoria, I've got a piece in the Post this morning arguing that the Abraham Accords, which you two both helped contribute to, are in danger from the Biden administration. I hope that they restore them. So I'm worried about keeping what we've got. And then I read that you and Len are suggesting the Cyrus Accords. First of all, why call them the Cyrus Accords? And then number two, aren't you worried about keeping the Abraham Accords with Team Biden around?
Well, I think we're going to have to walk and chew gum at the same time, Hugh. And yes, the reason Len and I are proposing Cyrus Accords is, of course, the great historical leader of Persia, Cyrus the Great, was an extremely tolerant and enlightened ruler who made room for the Jews and who actually helped them. And so I think to invoke the name of Cyrus the Great, which both President Trump and Secretary Pompeo did repeatedly in their rhetoric on Iran, is a very effective way to point toward what we're trying to achieve. And I agree with you. We have to be vigilant about protecting the Abraham Accords as well. I think, I agree again with Len, not surprisingly, that the arc of history bends towards freedom and justice. But at the same time, we've got to help that arc. It doesn't just happen on its own. And so I think we need to be extremely mindful as we see things like the pause in the F-35 sales, which is extremely concerning, and increased Chinese aggression in the region, particularly as we come out of the pandemic. I think it's beholden on all of us who care about U.S. national security to remain highly engaged in the region, providing an alternative and really supporting the historic progress of the Abraham Accords.
Now, Len, over at Message from Len, your Twitter account, you've been engaged in a running shootout with the Iranian regime for a long, long time. Do you honestly think there's some way for the Iranian people to reach around the Khomeiniist ideology and the Khomeini regime to engage Israelis?
Well, they're doing it today, Hugh. Whether it's reaching around the regime to contact the United States government, as during the time that Victoria and I served, we made a concerted effort to try and engage with the Iranian people, who clearly do not respect their government and find ways to get around censorship and internet shutdowns. And so Secretary Pompeo and Brian Hook, if you recall, they actually held many, many roundtables with the Iranian diaspora. Secretary Pompeo, during the November 2019 protests in Iran, actually asked the Iranian people to submit evidence of human rights abuses and killings by the government. And in fact, we received thousands and thousands of pieces of evidence, videos, texts, messages from the Iranian people that documented the regime's abuses that went around the regime's attempts to shut them down. In fact, Hugh, a number of actions that the administration took to sanction various judges and members of Besiege were as a result of the evidence that we received. So it is possible. They are doing it.
Now, Victoria, one of the things, my most memorable trips in recent years was with then National Security Advisor Bolton and you to Israel and Turkey. And I remember in Israel the wariness with which the officials would speak off the record of any resurrection of the JCPOA, what a disaster it had been. Do you actually think Team Biden is going to do that, or are they simply giving lip service to that discredited and now defunct deal?
Well, Hugh, I don't pretend to have any great insight into their decision-making process. I do think if they can look dispassionately at the achievements of the last 4 years, particularly in the Middle East, they could see that these policies worked. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We have the Abraham Accords. We have our Arab partners and allies leaning towards us, wanting us to be the partner of choice. And my hope would be, again, that they will look at the clock. We obviously face enormous domestic challenges here at home. We're getting very concerning information today about the British variant on the COVID virus and how that may spread in the next 4 or 5 weeks. And the window here is short, because one thing that's, I think, rightfully not on the radar screen of most Americans is the fact that they have elections coming up in June in Iran. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Presidential. This is the end of the Rouhani term, and those who consider Rouhani and his sidekick Javad Zarif somehow moderates bemoan this end of a glorious era of cooperation. What they ignore there is, of course, both Rouhani and Zarif are the hand-picked creatures of the supreme leader of Iran, who will be picking all of the candidates who will run in this election. So this notion that we will somehow get a reformist president who is going to bring change to Iran is a fallacy, while the supreme leader is controlling the electoral system. But the Iranian people know this, and it has caused great unrest before. We're starting to see upticks in labor protests right now, for example. So I think this is going to be a very charged period. As I said, the window is short. Their plate is full. Like all Americans, I wish them nothing but success in dealing with the virus, and think maybe they should concentrate their efforts on that and not trying to resurrect, as you say, the defunct JCPOA.
And Len, a last question. I have tweeted out the Jerusalem Post editorial by Victoria and Len. In the aftermath of the election early in President Obama's tenure in Iran, he chose to turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to protests in Iran. If those protests rekindle in the aftermath of this spring's election, do you expect Team Biden to turn a blind eye again?
I sure hope not, Hugh. Again, as Victoria said, hopefully they weren't asleep for the last 4 years, and they could see that there is actual dialogue between the United States and the Iranian people. The Iranian people love America, unlike the mullahs who chant death to America and death to Israel. And it's really important that the American government stand by its values and support freedom, at the very least, openly and vocally. So again, just as a former Soviet refugee who spent his youth in the Soviet Union when Sharansky and Sakharov were imprisoned by the Soviet regime, we heard voices of the American politicians. They, I believe Sharansky actually said that even being in prison, he got strength from hearing American politicians stand by the dissidents. And we tried to do that in the last 4 years. And I surely hope that the Biden administration takes that lesson and does the same, because the future, Hugh, is the future of Cyrus Accords and not JCPOA.
Gosh, I hope you are right. Len Khodorkovsky, Victoria Coates. Follow them at Message from Len and at Victoria Coates. Thank you.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Sally Pipes is my guest. Sally, do you think it's fair to say that the majority of Americans are really too afraid to have health care, have the private sector completely run health care? They don't trust the private sector enough to allow the private sector to run health care. They've been trained to fear the private sector and to embrace government to the point now where a discussion about unraveling government entanglement in health care we can't even have anymore?
Well, first of all, Larry, we don't have a complete private market in healthcare in this country, as you know.
Yeah.
50% of our healthcare is in the hands of government through Medicare, the program for our seniors, of which covers 65 million, Medicaid, the program for low-income people, that covers now 70 million Americans, the CHIP program, the Veterans Administration. So we don't have a private market. But the progressive liberals, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the mainstream media, have just brainwashed the American people to say that the private sector cannot provide the kinds of alternatives and different types of plans for people. So people have been completely bamboozled. But it's interesting that, 59% of people polled say they support single payer, a complete government takeover of healthcare, which Bernie Sanders wants.
Right.
But when you ask the people, 160 million of them, which have private insurance in the employer market, if you ask them, well, you're going to have to pay much higher taxes, support goes down to 37%. If you tell them we're going to take away your private coverage and everybody's going to be in a government plan, support goes down to 26%. The problem is people don't understand what it means.
And Sally, the very same people that are complaining about the vaccination rollout are perfectly content to have the government take over everything. Sally.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So let's get right to it. This is a brand new book. How do we turn our seasons around? Because a lot of us are going through tough seasons. I'm going through a slump right now. I'm hitting 220, and that's just not right.
I remember when the media would write me off and say, well, he's having a first half of the season that's not so good, but they forgot I have 82 ball games left. You have a whole second half of your season. Okay, now we've been in the middle of a struggle crisis in this nation, and the season has to turn around. You have to go through a period. We might be going through like 8 months, 9 months, but at the end of the day, we walk into 2021, and you have to think about a fresh outlook. And I think that's what life is really all about. That's just the way God works. God works in some mysterious ways, and he works in your life to meet you right where you're at. And I think we all in the same boat today. And, for me to have a book that comes out, Turn Your Season Around, we're all going to have to turn our season around. How God transformed your life. He transformed your life if you meet him right where he's at. The thing about it is, what I laugh about, a lot of people say, well, how did you find Jesus? Well, Jesus has never been lost. We are the ones that were lost. We are the ones that have to turn our season around. And he just meets us right in the midst of our season, and he brings us to a greater understanding and the purpose of why he created us. And that's the cool thing about having a relationship with God.
The Bible is full of stories of, the Israelites up against the Red Sea. Their season was over. And then, God turned their season around.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, and his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a fear.
Biggest political story of the day. Kevin Falconer, former mayor of San Diego, announced a committee yesterday. He thinks, and that's a good leading indicator, that there is going to be a recall attempt of Gavin Newsom that makes it to the ballot, that the signatures are sufficient. So he launched a campaign. Kevin Falconer is going to run. I think Richard Grinnell's going to run. A couple of billionaires. They're going to have like a circus full of people. John Cox, if you're listening, don't run. You had your shot. Don't screw up the Republican vote. It'll be between Kevin and Rick Grinnell and me if I get in. But I just want people to know it's going to happen. And it's going to happen because of three things. The schools and businesses are closed, number one. The homeless crisis is out of control in California. And it's so much worse than you have any idea. That the people in charge, that would be Governor Newsom, Mayor Garcetti, the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor everywhere, they've all got to be replaced. Their governments are dysfunctional when it comes to the basic public safety of people sleeping on the streets. And it's just a terrible, embarrassing, shameful situation in America. And there's paralysis. And then finally, taxes are driving people out of the state. You can't run taxes this high. They just leave. It's like me. I went to Virginia. I'm back for January, February, and March until I get vaccinated, but I'll be back in Virginia then. And everybody is leaving. So they have to change. Now I want to go over and listen to Bill Cassidy, senator from Louisiana, part of the Gang of 10, the Collins and Company. Made an offer to Joe Biden yesterday, the president, on COVID relief. Here's what he said the response is, cut number 5.
The president's team did not reach out to anybody in our group, either Democrat or Republican, when they fashioned their proposal. So if you want unity, if you want bipartisanship, you ought to start with a group that's shown it's willing to work together for a common solution. They did not. Secondly, ours is about $600 billion. And as opposed to the extraneous things, which Mr. Bernstein kind of tried to glide over, we are very targeted. We're targeted to the needs of the American people, treating our tax dollars as if there are tax dollars, not just money to spend, and putting it where we need to come out of the pandemic. Now, we think there's a lot here to work with. We hope we finally start getting that bipartisan and with the White House negotiation. So far, we've not received it.
Now, I also want to go to Senator Rob Portman, Ohio's great senator, a friend of mine. He was on with Dana Bash yesterday, who I think is, along with John Dickerson and Lester Holt, the three mainstream media anchors I am certain would be acceptable for a Republican debate when they begin to unfold. Not as good as me, but they'd be good. So Rob sat down with Dana and, first of all, addressed President Trump's impeachment trial, cut number 10.
Well, let me just say clearly, and I've said this, as you know, since November, which is that there was not adequate irregularities or fraud, not widespread enough to change the result of the election, period. That's my view. It's the view, by the way, of the Trump Department, of the Trump Justice Department. Bill Barr said that before he left office. And so I think we need to be very clear with the American people. Those who voted for Donald Trump, and I, was a Trump supporter, and I think his policies were better for the country and better for my state. We have to acknowledge that this election was lost, and we have to move on. And Joe Biden is now the duly elected president of the United States. So if the argument is not going to be made on issues like constitutionality, which are real issues and need to be addressed, I think it will not benefit the president.
He's absolutely right. One-line defense, this is unconstitutional. Rob Portman also defended the remarkable and amazing Liz Cheney, as I have and as you should, cut number 9.
Well, she is a friend. I'm biased. I think she's very smart, and she plays a key role in our party, particularly on foreign affairs. So I would hope that they would not go down that road. I think it's important to have her voice in the process. And, my sense is that she has a lot of support in the Republican conference. I'm in the Senate, not the House, and House members, as I used to be, hate to have the senators tell them what to do, but the truth is, I think she's very valuable for the team and a great leader.
The truth is that people who are against Liz Cheney are against the party. The Republican Party has got to have a big tent, but it's not open to everyone. You can't be crazy. You can't be in it and advocate violence. You can't be in it and believe in QAnon. But you ought to be able to be in it if you're a centrist. And everyone from the center all the way over to the responsible right. And there are a lot of conservatives who are responsible right. Everyone ought to be in there. And Liz Cheney and Rob Portman are right in the middle of that spectrum. They're the tent pole. And they need to be listened to. Stay tuned. I'm coming right back with Joni Ernst.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I'm just reading Coca-Cola, one of the biggest companies, has notified its law firms that it will not do business with them unless they are properly diversified. May I say that the aim of diversity over merit is not only injurious to any given profession, that's obvious to anybody, but it's very un-American. What it says to you is hard work doesn't pay, minority status pays. And that's the message of Coca-Cola. At this point, there are so many companies that are ruining the society that to boycott all of them would mean you would buy very few products. So it just came out, and I am very curious. My first question was, what does it even mean? What will they do? They'll have to submit reports, is that correct, to Coca-Cola? Coke sets diversity targets, financial penalties for outside lawyers. Coca-Cola said it will require diversity among law firms who bill it for work in the United States and reduce payments if they don't comply. The beverage giant's general counsel, a recent hire from the top ranks of Ford, disclosed the changes in a letter to law firms the company uses. Quite simply, we are no longer interested in discussing motivations, programs, or excuses for little to no progress. It's the results that we are demanding and will measure going forward, Bradley Gayton wrote.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I often wonder if people have the ability to be objective enough to look at actual data and be truthful about things like the way Democrat-led states have responded to coronavirus and how Republican-led states have done so. For example, Florida. You know, I go a little bit back and forth between the state of Florida and New York, so I get to see how both states are responding to COVID with lockdowns, shutdowns, or some semblance of normalcy. There is a semblance of normalcy in Florida that there is not in New York. So it's really pretty stunning to look at the difference between the way the two states and the two communities really have responded to this pandemic. But have you looked at the data? Because to listen to the mainstream media, Ron DeSantis is just some wild, out of control lunatic who has totally botched Florida's coronavirus response. But Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, is Mother Teresa and has done everything perfectly, and the numbers are great, and everything's wonderful in New York. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. If you put on a chart the deaths per capita, the illness, the infection rate, the economy, if you lay it all on a chart and compare Florida to California and New York, it's not even a close call.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Verka.
Numbers matter. And think about the fact that they always tout the popular vote as opposed to the Electoral College. That's why every vote matters. Even if you're in California, you like yourself, Victor, in Maryland, every single vote matters. And this is why you never give up. It's not an excuse, but you're absolutely right from the historical perspective. Politics is cyclical. It truly is cyclical. You know, you get a Reagan because of a Carter. That's absolutely true. You get a Donald Trump because of what? Because of the betrayal of the American people by both sides of the political aisle. So the idea that simply because they managed to do what they did in November, that's it, we're done? Absolutely not. Think about one thing and one thing alone. How did they treat Donald Trump when he came down those escalators? And I don't mean just the left. I don't mean the late night talk show hosts, the quote unquote comedians. I mean the right, the establishment. Do you remember? And what happened? He trounced them all. Even after the Billy Bush tape, he was a
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Joni Ernst from the great state of Iowa. Senator, good morning. Always good to talk to you.
Oh, great to be with you, Hugh. Thank you.
Senator, in the fall, you won your election pretty handily. By how many points?
It was over 6, closer to 7.
All right. So it was a big, handy win. The reason I bring that up is this weekend I was sitting down with friends going over the list of people who are being mentioned for the 2024 presidential election. And I finally said, you know, Joni Ernst has got to be on this. Have you ruled out running for president in 2024?
I will not be running for president in 2024. My commitment to the state of Iowa and my constituents there is stronger than ever. And I've still got work to do in the Senate, Hugh.
So you're just not going to do it?
Nope, just not going to do it. I think we've got a lot of colleagues that are looking at that and have aspirations to seek the office of president. But once again, I'm just very committed to my constituents in Iowa and want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for them.
Okay. Next time you get out, you should not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. That would be perfect. So, Senator, I want to go to two big things, the impeachment and COVID relief. I want to start with impeachment. I believe you voted not to proceed. Do you believe these proceedings are unconstitutional?
I absolutely do believe that they are unconstitutional. We have a trial that's being targeted at a private citizen right now sitting in the state of Florida. I don't believe this is the right thing to do. And certainly if the Democrats want to proceed with it now, what's to stop in the future any other impeachment proceedings going against any other former president?
Now, there has been upheaval on former President Trump's legal team. To me, the best legal defense is a one-line letter. These proceedings are unconstitutional and I shall not be participating. What would you think of such a defense?
Well, I think that is the greatest defense that we have on our side, is that it simply is unconstitutional, bottom line.
So I would agree with that. Now let's go to COVID relief. You are not in what is being called the Collins and Company 10, and that's only what Punchbowl called it this morning. Is that because you don't like their approach, or because they only needed 10 to get to the magical 60 for non-reconciliation filibuster proof? Why are you not part of that 10? Because I generally consider you to be one of the people that Democrats can work with very easily.
No. Well, and actually, Hugh, I was just visiting with Lisa Murkowski over the weekend and had texted her this morning. I am largely supportive of their plan, and I will support it. It focuses quite heavily on vaccine distribution, making sure that we are developing it. It does have my child care plan in it as well. So I am supportive of the package. We continue to gain momentum with Republicans. The important thing is to show that as Republicans, we do have follow-on plans for COVID-19. What the Democrats are trying to portray is that we have no plan. We need to proceed with Bernie Sanders' budget resolution. So after that, they can tack on reconciliation and pass anything they want with 51 votes. And we can't allow that. We still do have additional work to do in the area of COVID-19, but it really does have to be a targeted, focused plan. So yes, large in part, I am very supportive of this. I appreciate that so many people have been working so hard on this.
So the 10 is a floor, not a ceiling of GOP support.
It is absolutely the floor. It continues to grow, and the 10 that have been working on this package, and I've worked on different pieces of it, large in part the child care portion that has been included, but it is the floor, and we do continue to see momentum grow. Again, going through the package, it's focused on K through 12 schools, child care, direct COVID pandemic response, again, with vaccinations. There is a small portion that is focused on nutrition as well, making sure that our families have support in their food systems. And there's also behavioral health supports, which is really important. So there's a lot of really great stuff in the package, but it's certainly not the $1.9 trillion that's being proposed by Biden and the Democrats.
What is behavioral health support, Senator?
Well, it is providing the funds necessary to bolster behavioral health supports in the states. A lot of the states already do have programs in place, and this will further grow that out. But what we have seen, certainly through the pandemic, is those that, because of isolation, have just further and further fallen behind in their behavioral health. We have seen suicides. We have seen abuse growing within the home because there's not the outlets of schools and work and so forth. So these are important aspects that we really need to focus on as well, and make sure that not only with the vaccinations we're focusing on physical health, but that we're also taking care of mental health. And I would say in a lot of cases, too, we want to make sure, and this isn't part of the plan, but also spiritual health. This has been a very difficult year. We're not through it yet. We want to make sure that people know that there are resources available if they are struggling with mental health or behavioral health.
Senator, the homelessness crisis in California, where I am and will be for a couple more months, is out of exponentially worse than I have seen in my 30 years in the state. Are there funds for that? Would that come under behavioral health?
Well, not specifically for homelessness, but certainly then those in those populations would be able to utilize those services. So yes, it is not just for stabilized families. It is for anyone who would need those resources. And we certainly know that large in part with the homeless population, there is mental illness, there is substance abuse, and all of those issues could be treated through this behavioral support package.
You mentioned the child care aspect. Again, I'm not sure what the details are. Can you expand on that?
Yes, and this is additional dollars that will go out the door for block development grants for child care centers. Iowa is a prime example because we have so many child care deserts, meaning that there are vast areas where we don't have child care centers, or they are closing because moms and dads have been out of work because of COVID. So they're not taking their children to those child care centers. Those child care centers can't survive, so they close their doors, many of them permanently. What we need to do is get them reopen again, because as our economy is opening up and jobs are becoming available, Moms and dads need to have a safe place to take their children. Otherwise, it's that chicken or the egg, cycle that we have to break out of. So we certainly need to get these doors back open. That's what these child development block grants can do. As well, it helps provide cleaning supplies and other safety measures for those child care centers to make sure that not only the children are safe, but then also those child care workers are safe as well.
So finally, Senator Ernst, you served with Vice President Biden when he presided over the Senate. He's now the president. Do you expect him to actually sort of revert to Senate form and the give and take that marked his almost 40 years as a member of or a presiding officer in the Senate?
Well, Hugh, the president was out there stumping about bipartisanship and so forth. But what I have seen exhibited so far in this presidency is say one thing, do another. And we've seen that with a number of his executive actions so far, just rolling back virtually everything that President Trump had done in his tenure in office. We see him trying to move forward with some of these ideas, start establishing a commission to reform the courts. And he's politicizing everything that has been good in our nation's history. So it's really unfortunate that he's saying one thing, but his actions are just totally going a different direction. And I feel that maybe he'll prove us wrong, but I think he duped a lot of voters.
Now, Senator, reforming the courts, I can understand how reconciliation could be twisted to spend money and to raise taxes. I don't think it can survive the Byrd rule to expand the courts. Do you?
We hope not. But this is what we do take a look at is Democrats are so hungry to gain power in the United States Senate. And as AOC has said in the House, we don't want bipartisanship. We want full authority. We want to roll over everybody. If they continue down this path in the Senate and get rid of the Byrd rule, if they start moving towards eliminating the filibuster, if they can put enough pressure on Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, they will have full reign and control over the direction of our nation. And the Senate has a long history of bipartisanship. We've tried very hard. We hope it stays in place. So, yes, the question is still out. We hope that our friends and allies stand strong on the filibuster, but, they can change that. They can overrule the parliamentarian and do as they wish.
Well, the Byrd rule hadn't occurred to me as being something that they might roll over. Do you believe Senators Manchin, Sinema, and I don't know, is there a third or a fourth moderate? Will they stand as tall on the Byrd rule as they have on the filibuster?
Well, we are hopeful. They have not been as outspoken on the Byrd rule. But yes, this is a concern of ours. Not only is the filibuster a concern, but the Byrd rule is also a concern because they could overrule. They could make that decision to roll over us, again, ending, what has been decades and decades of bipartisanship and agreement in the Senate. They simply could eliminate.
Would that trigger what Senator Leader McConnell said would be the desert of the Senate, the refusal to have a quorum? Is the Byrd rule one of those things around which the procedural nightmares begin if they invoke any kind of attempt to change it?
And I do believe so, Hugh, and I think that is very unfortunate. But in order to stop them from proceeding, with a threshold of 51 votes or including things that have long been prohibited by the Byrd rule, then it could trigger just this expanse of not getting anything done in the United States Senate, which simply would block all the work that Congress is doing. And we really don't want to see that. We do want the Democrats to be good partners to us, but simply forcing things through, in what should be appropriations bills or otherwise, that has generally been prohibited in the past. It's not the right way to do business. The Democrats do need to work with us on this.
On that note, Senator Ernst, keep coming back. Thank you. That was very clear. That was very helpful, and I appreciate your time. Have a good morning.
Absolutely, Hugh. Take care.
And let me tell, I do take care. I take care to take my relieffactor.com, great sponsor of the show. And it comes up at this hour at every time where I take my relieffactor.com in the first hour. And I remind you now, don't leave home without it. Tens of thousands of people listen to this show, and I get new listeners every day, 6 million people a week. I wish you all would take Relief Factor. You'd all feel better. I don't know that you'd be doing as much exercise. Dwayne did a 25-mile scooter ride yesterday. So I actually don't know if that involves the use of muscles. Does it, Dwayne? Did the scooter actually require muscle movement?
Yeah, it does.
Does it ache?
No, I don't ache.
So you don't need relieffactor.com. That's for the support of the temporary relief of minor aches and pains that usually don't come along when you're on your scooter. But if you're out there doing real exercise, you need relieffactor.com. 1995, get you started. Come right back. Last segment of today's Hugh Hewitt Show is with Stephen Pressfield.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Dinesh, we've got a new president now. He's been in office for about 5 or 6 days. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't seem to be very much in control of the situation, but he has been very vigorous in signing a blizzard of executive orders, all of which seem to me thoroughly destructive. The business about climate change, the executive orders on oil leasing and fracking. Of course, he got rid of the 1776 commission. So he's doing all the bad stuff we warned people that he would do. And at some point, you've got to ask, isn't this going to have a very bad effect on America? A little part of me wishes that it does, because I think we have to open the eyes of the American people to what moving in a socialist direction means. So, yes, I think we're off to a very bad start. It's what we warned about, and we're about to see the fruits of it.
Well, but Dinesh, we're healing. He's reaching out to the other side and urging everybody to heal. I recall when President Trump was campaigning, Dinesh, as you know, one of the big applause lines was lock her up, lock her up. One of the first things he did was to say, I'm not going to pursue her. Quote, she suffered enough, and he felt he wanted to concentrate on his own agenda. When is Biden going to pick up the phone, Dinesh, and call Schumer and call Pelosi and say, call off the dogs? This is an idiotic trial, and we shouldn't be wasting the American people's time with it.
Well, the very fact that they're pushing ahead with it, I mean, it looks like they may have up to 5 Republican votes, not even necessarily 5 for conviction, 5 just for hearing it, and the other 45 would have thrown it straight out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the information, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start today with prevention. And there's 5 supplements you can take. There's 5 lifestyle changes that you can do for prevention. Unfortunately, it's not told, but you know what? It works. And we started back in March. We had people make sure they elevate their own immune system by 3 key nutrients. And when they increase their vitamin D levels, they increase their zinc levels, they increase their glutathione levels and vitamin C levels, guess what? These people are more resistant and resilient to all viruses, including COVID. So if they did get the case, it would be reversed quickly, or they didn't get it at all. You know how much this cost? The average.
Is that too loud now?
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'm launching a new podcast, First podcast I've ever done. It's going to be called The Interview, because that's what I've done for 30 years, long-form interviews. And some of the most memorable long-form interviews I've ever done is with my next guest, an old friend, Stephen Pressfield. And Stephen, good morning to you. It's good to see you. It's good to have you back, and congratulations on your new book, A Man at Arms, which I'm holding here in the studio with me. It's always great to finish a book, but this one has really got me interested. Welcome. How you doing?
It's great to be with you, Hugh. Thanks a lot. This is a whole new scenario here. Every time we've done this before, we've been in the same studio together. So let's go for it.
All right. Well, I want to begin by saying A Man at Arms, which is available now for pre-order and at stephenpressfield.com, has on it, I think it's an interesting choice, a beautiful cover, but it also says best-selling author of Gates of Fire. And I wonder if you like that or don't like that, because if it were me, I would have put on best-selling author of Lionsgate or best-selling author of Killing Rommel. Actually, Lionsgate's my favorite. Do you mind always being associated with Gates of Fire, even when you've got a new book out?
Not at all, really. I mean, I'm really proud of that book, and also I think it's really the one that sold the most for me. So so that's the one that's it's sort of if I'm associated with anything, primarily it's that book. So no, I'm very happy to be associated with Gates of Fire.
All right. Now, I think A Man at Arms is going to rival that. Now, I think The Lionsgate's one of the most emotional books I've read, but I think every warrior, like they are drawn, the people I know in the military have all read Gates of Fire, and I now think they're all going to read A Man at Arms. Have you had that kind of reaction from the men and women who are warriors that you know?
Hugh, I'm having a hard time hearing you here. I'm not sure maybe I'm doing something wrong.
Maybe I'm not talking loud enough. Is that better?
No, try again. Say that one more
All right.
time.
So I think A Man at Arms is going to be as successful as Gates of Fire with warriors, with people in uniform. Have you had that reaction yet from the men and women you know who are in arms?
Yes, I have. And not only from men and women in uniform, but from literary people as well. From my agent, my publisher, people that are, that like yourself, that are real readers and that look at things beyond, say the actual subject matter, the military subject matter. But yeah, definitely, because a lot of my friends are, active duty or retired, and they're definitely responding really well to this.
Well, I spoke with one of our mutual friends who I will not name over the weekend, and I can't wait to hear what he thinks, because he's the warrior personified. Can you hear me yet, Stephen?
Man, I'm sorry, Hugh. I'm having a hard time hearing you. You talked to somebody over the weekend, and
yeah, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to call you back and try and reconnect, because I will tell people about A Man at Arms while we do that, but you've got to be able to hear me, or otherwise it's not going to work. And so, Generalissimo, you want to take over and try and get Stephen back and connected, because this is a terrific book, America. I've had Stephen on probably 15 times over the course of my 30 years in broadcast, beginning with Gates of Fire. And I'm a huge fan. He's a wonderful guy. He's a Marine, by the way. You never stop being a Marine. And Gates of Fire is sort of the go-to. I'm a civilian. I'm not a warrior. I'm like the last thing from a warrior. But I find in his books accuracy and beauty, a terrific attention to detail, and the kind of inspiration that people need who are not normally inspired by literature. A lot of people who are not hardcore readers of literature have found Stephen's work over the years. I'll tell you, The Lionsgate made me cry, and that's the sort of work that you will get from Stephen Pressfield. So no matter who you are or where you are, you can, I know some of you golfers love The Legend of Bagger Vance, and others of you like Just Do It, his work on writing, his work on being an artist. But what I'd like most of you, you're back. So let's give this another shot, Stephen. Can you hear me better this time?
Yes, definitely. So I'll just keep listening to you on the phone, in other words.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to go about it.
Okay,
All right.
okay, great. I can hear you.
So let's go then, Stephen, to talking about why this book, because the Roman Legion clearly impresses everyone with a grasp of history, but what this book is so different from anything you've done before. Why did you do it?
Good question back, Hugh. Why do you think the book is so different from? What's different in your point of view?
It is much more religious. It is much more interested in the spiritual side of life, the warrior ethos, the warrior virtues. I associate that with Stephen Pressfield. I never expected to see someone with a grasp of early Christianity as you display in this book from you.
That's okay. That's very interesting. You know, it's funny, Art. Let's see if I can answer this, Hugh. This character, the lead character in A Man at Arms, is a character that's a recurring character in other books of mine. He was in The Virtues of War, and he was in Tides of War as just kind of a straight warrior, like a one-man killing machine type of Clint Eastwood, man with no name type of character. And I wanted in this book, people have asked me...
What happened there? I don't know what happened there. I know what's happening, Stephen. They're playing the exit of the interview over there. So go on.
Okay.
So back to Telamon.
Okay. So he's this recurring character, and people have asked me, and I've asked myself, how about writing a book just about him and following his journey, which has always been kind of fascinating to me because he's kind of a warrior philosopher in that he's not satisfied with just doing what, weaponry and stuff like that. He wants to move beyond that. So as this book, unfolded, and you know how books go, you start something and it goes its own way. I found that it was just becoming more kind of faith-based and more onto the soul level than onto just a physical level. And so it just sort of evolved into this, much more faith-based point of view.
There is a lot of spirituality in The Legend of Bagger Vance and in a number of your other books. And Alcibiades. I mean, there is a lot of Greek understanding and Roman understanding. But this is your first, as far as I know, it's your first grappling with the Christian story. Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's true. Although, I mean, The Legend of Bagger Vance was a bit of, coming up against the edges of that, even though it was kind of based on a Hindu scripture, and it was really Krishna, but it was already getting into that area. Yes.
So you've come back around.
Time that I've addressed it directly.
Now, I always, when I do a novelist, I don't want to give away anything except clues. I will simply say that the Apostle Paul is central to A Man at Arms, even though Telamon, the warrior, is the central character. I am curious what you don't describe it much. What do you think of Paul at the end of your work and labor and your obvious deep research into early Christendom and his life and travels? What do you think of Paul?
In many ways, I mean, Paul is sort of almost an equal figure to Jesus in terms of establishing the articulation of the faith, And it seems to me that Paul boils it down to love. Charity, faith, hope, and charity, but charity is the greatest of them. So he's also a very kind of mysterious figure to me that we don't know that much about how he actually did what he did. But it's funny, I'll tell you a little story here. A couple of years ago, I was asked by my niece, who was getting married, to be the officiant, to be the one who did the marrying.
Oh.
And I went to the Book of Common Prayer to, sort of put together what I was going to say or what the vows were going to be. And, of course, a lot of that is straight out of Paul's 1 Corinthians. So that kind of really got me into that, idea about love suffereth long and is kind, love believeth all things, endureth all things, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's really an underground river, a current that got into this book.
Part of your gift is to create images of people in your reader's mind. Images of the Spartans at Thermopylae, images of Alcibiades, images of soccer, images of people. What do you imagine Paul to have been like?
Wow. I tell you the truth, Hugh, I've never created an image of him in my mind other than, somebody wearing a robe of some kind. But no, I don't have an image. Do you have one?
Yeah, peripatetic little guy who won't shut up. And so I find him to be fascinating, but we don't know. Now, I want to go to a couple of other things. You have an assessment of early first century Judaism of three general categories: the elites, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the zealots who hate Rome, and then the Nazarenes, the Christians. How did you dive into this? I mean, where did you go to learn not only about early Christianity, but about late Temple Judaism?
As you were mentioned before, an earlier book of mine, The Lion's Gate, and which is about the Six-Day War, the Israeli-Arab War of 1967. And I went over to Israel for 9 weeks to research that. And I was just kind of exposed not only to the land, but to, I interviewed 75 veterans of that war. And somehow I just kind of by osmosis, I just sort of absorbed that, because, every conversation in Israel gets back to the Bible very fast, and the land of Israel. So I think I sort of absorbed it there. But also, as a writer, you take liberties with stuff, right? You want to construct the story and give it certain structural elements that are going to work. And I always like to break things into threes, so the rule of three. So I liked having those three elements because they all played into the story, three elements of early Judaism. So that's...
it's the first time I've actually seen...
it that great, Hugh. I sort of picked the story and went with it.
Well, I thought the portrayal of the zealots, about whom we know a little but not a lot, was missing from my understanding of the era. And I get the Romans, I get the Christians, I get the Pharisees and the Sadducees, but I hadn't really thought much about the zealots, even though there's Simon the Zealot. Let me ask you about your depth of understanding of the physical desert. Now, I read Killing Rommel, and I thought that was terrific, but this is at a whole different granular level, because Killing Rommel is a mobilized, mechanized war. They don't have to survive on scorpion sap and these little... How did you get that?
Well, part of it was that trip to Israel. I didn't actually get to go into the Sinai Desert because it was Egypt and it was out of bounds. But I talked to and interviewed a bunch of guys who were in the Sinai campaign in '67, and they had a lot of photos and they told me a lot of stories. And I sort of, evolved it that way in my own mind. And also, there's a wonderful movie. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie called Thebe. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Theeb.
No.
It's by a young Jordanian director, and it's kind of about that desert. And I watched that about 5 times and just sort of soaked it all in, the geography and how the wells worked and how you got water out of the wells and all that kind of thing.
Oh, the quick takeaway is you would do journeys by the number of wells you had to cover. 60 well, exactly. It's a 60 well journey. Something I didn't know. Now, the interesting thing the big philosophical question, the idea of Rome is invincible. Edward Gibbon and maybe the Emperor Julian blamed the decline of Rome on Christianity. Do you come to that conclusion at the end?
I do.
Interesting.
And that there's that, not to give away too much, but there's that one bit of dialogue in the book where one character, a Roman tribune, says that the emperor doesn't fear armies at all. He knows he can defeat armies, but what he does fear is a faith, a new faith. That's what can do it.
That is the one I wrote along with the witch's decision, which I won't give too much away, and why she changes. And it comes down to what is Rome susceptible to. So how much had you studied and I know you know the Greeks backwards and forwards, and you're so deep into the Greeks, but how much did you study the Roman brutality, their way of winning?
I didn't really do massive research in that. I just sort of know it tangentially from, well, I guess I should say I have done lots of research over the years, but not specifically for this book. But that was, Rome was like a machine.
Yep.
More than, say, the Spartans or the Athenians or even Alexander. It was, order was their thing, that a commander gives an order and everybody follows it out. And that was really their secret to conquering the world, that they were a machine.
Yeah. I like the fact that you have Telamon, the central character, at one point say, I was in the legions, I was never of them. First of all, that's very evocative of the Christian understanding and the admonition to be in the world but not of it. But it's also, you conveyed the commitment that was required to the legion. I mean, it was decades of your life when you put up your hand and joined.
Yeah, you signed up for 25 years. Yeah, that was a hell of a hitch.
When you signed up for the Marines, it was like 3, wasn't it?
Well, it was 6 in the reserves, but
6.
Yeah, 25 years, that's a serious commitment.
It is, and Legion 10, I looked it up to prepare for this, which is the central legion in the book, was actually in Judea. Is that why you picked it? Because it was actually coordinate with the period that you're covering?
Yeah, because it was the true legion. There actually were 2 legions, the 10th Fretensis and the 10th Gemina, but the 10th Fretensis was the one in Judea at the time. And actually, as far as the Jewish people are concerned, the 10th Legion is like the devil, because they were the ones who burned the temple in 70 A.D. They were the ones who sacked Masada, and they were the ones who really initiated the diaspora, basically kicked the Jews out of the Holy Land in 70 A.D. So the 10th Legion was also Caesar's Legion originally, 100 and something years earlier in Gaul.
That's why I went back and looked at why this legion, so it made perfect sense to me. Now, I also wonder, how much did you have to die? A man-at-arms suggests that the weaponry is going to be very significant. And indeed, throughout the book, we've got the spatha, the gladius, the javelin, I mean, the whole 9 yards. This is the Roman legionnaire with some additional superpowers, not superpowers, but a special weaponry. He doesn't have any superpowers. How long did that take, Stephen? Is that already in the Pressfield lore?
That was already in the Pressfield lore. I really thought of Telamon Hugh as you remember the movie The Seven Samurai?
Of course. Yeah.
So I thought of him as kind of a solitary samurai that has, the sword, has the bow, doesn't have any weapons that involve gunpowder, but is like a Clint Eastwood man with no name using those weapons, those edged weapons and those missile weapons.
There is a great scene in the opening of Achilles, Brad Pitt, Troy, where he just comes up and kills the big guy. And that's sort of like your opening scene here, which sort of sets the parameters of the man-at-arms' physical abilities. Do you think most warriors will agree that he's believable? I think he's believable because of his flaws. He's not a superhero. What do you think?
I hope he's believable. I mean, I don't think he, any sort of classic character, like, say, in a Western or a John Wick character or a John Wayne character or a Clint Eastwood character, you usually have some kind of a scene where, they take on multiple antagonists, right? A bar fight or a gunfight or something like that, and they wipe out, 5 or 6 people at once. And I think you, or at least me in the audience, I usually accept that, They're just great with a weapon. They can do it. They're like Achilles, and we accept that they're like, not necessarily a superhero, but really skilled with the weapons that they're working with.
Yeah, I've been blessed to know a lot of SEALs, as you have.
Yeah.
And if they're in a gunfight, they're pretty skilled at what they do. They know what they're doing. They've trained a lot.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk to you about the warrior ethos. You've got a video series, by the way, over at Stephen Pressfield. How long does that go for, and why did you start that? That's clearly not just about a man-at-arms. That's got to go far beyond a man-at-arms.
Well, thanks for asking about that, Hugh. This is actually, it's been going on for 26 weeks. It's on Instagram. I do like 2 5, 6, 7-minute videos a week. And actually, I think this week is going to be the last one. It's going to be number 50. But I just wanted to, from working on Telamon, I kind of got really interested in the warrior archetype in the sense, the Jungian sense of the collective unconscious and the various archetypes that we evolve through. And I'm kind of a believer that you learn stuff by teaching it or by talking about it, and you find out what you think by kind of forcing yourself to teach something. So I just wanted to do that. I wanted to take it from the Spartans. The series starts talking about the Spartans at Thermopylae and kind of goes through Alexander the Great and finally comes down to Telamon. I hope I'm not blathering on too much here, Hugh.
Oh, no, please go. Go.
But I wanted to take it from, to me, the ancient Spartans were the supreme collective expression of the warrior archetype or the warrior ethos. A whole society that believed in this one thing. But then as you evolve through the Romans, the Macedonians, and so forth, and finally you get down to this character of Telamon, he's just an individual, a solitary individual, kind of like the samurai Ronin or the gunfighter, which to me is a metaphor for the life that you and I are living today, where we're sort of cut free, and this is a whole spiritual thing and the whole faith-based thing, where we're cut free from an overall societal concept of what the world is like and what heaven is like and all that kind of thing. And we as individuals have to kind of define our own state, our own aspiration, our own relation to other dimensions of reality. And I think that's why the character of Telamon is so fascinating to me, because he's a metaphor for what you and I are struggling with in the modern world today, kind of cut free. Like if you think about the medieval church, I mean, if you lived back in 1100 or 1200 or 1400, you were completely in a world, a self-contained world where you knew what heaven was, you knew what hell was, you knew what your role was. And you didn't have that sort of exquisite torture that we have today of having to define that all for ourselves.
It doesn't actually start until the Industrial Revolution, when people are cut free, or maybe the French Revolution. People are cut free from their station in life.
Invented this thing called the individual until then.
Now, the most surprising thing in this book to me is, the warrior ethos. He discusses on page 106. I do not serve money. I serve for the serving only. Fight for the fighting only. Tramp for the tramping only. It's kind of the essence, the distillation of the warrior ethos. And then flash forward many dozens of pages and far in the narrative, and the Nazarene Michael, who is about as far removed from Telamon in calling and activity, is having a conversation with him, which people have to read. And Telamon says to Michael, who is a civilian, he's like me, I admire you. This is the warrior says to Michael, I admire you. You are a warrior and a man. I have nothing but respect for you. This is a revelation to me, because a warrior is saying you don't have to be a warrior.
Yes. I mean, one of the things that, without giving away too much of the story, Michael the Nazarene is really a follower of Jesus, or certainly a follower of Paul. And as such, he takes the worst that the Romans can dish out physically, torture, and he never cracks. So in that sense, that's why Telamon respects him so much, that he is a spiritual warrior and a physical warrior in terms of enduring hell and not wavering from his beliefs and his faith.
That is, it's very interesting dialogue. That might be the heart of the book in terms of dialogue.
I think it is, actually.
Okay. It's the collision of the the agnostic warrior or even the atheist warrior who doesn't and argues with Michael about the existence or the possibility of faith. And I would recommend people to it who are believers for that conversation. Got to ask you, though, about, a lot of apologetics, a lot of Christian apologetics are focused on the cross, Stephen. You dug into crucifixion in the way that I've never seen a non-Christian do. Why? I mean, how?
Well, first of all, I got to say one thing to you, Hugh. You're sort of a writer's dream in terms of talking about something, because you really have read the material at such a depth, and your questions are so great. They always are. So I really thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Okay. But back to the crucifixion, riding the cross.
I think that, in any story, I don't care whether it's Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca or whatever, you name it, there always comes a moment when the hero is broken, is taken in some extreme, whether it's emotional or physical. They go up against the ultimate challenge, and they crack, like Jesus on the cross. And so to me, the crucifixion is like the extreme example of that in in history or in storytelling. So any hero has to go through some ordeal like that, and that's kind of, I don't want to give away too much more, but that's why that stuff is in there.
Most Christians listening to this will have thought long and hard about the crucifixion of Jesus and possibly two other people, the good thief and the bad thief.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some Christians will have seen Spartacus and will know that all of the Spartacus slaves were crucified on the way back to Rome. But they will not have thought about the actual construction and the rather extravagant use of crucifixion. What did that say to you about the Romans, Stephen?
Yeah, they were just, like I say, if we think about things like the Holocaust, we have to say that our modern world, we're capable of the unbelievable cruelty. But certainly in the ancient world, they were. I don't know, the concept of empathy doesn't seem to have entered into too much of what they were doing. They just found this exquisite way to just, torture the hell out of somebody and make death a slow, agonizing process. They just their world was order, and it was enacted by force, by physical force.
They had to drain empathy, compassion out of everyone who served the eagle. That's what comes across in a man-at-arms, is that you can't really be a Roman and have a heart.
Well, I'm sure that if we went back there, we'd find some people who did have hearts, but certainly in the legions and the way they operated, they were machines. They were war machines.
Well, I got three more questions for you, Stephen. Number one, Egypt. There's a bit of Egypt here, and you reflect that after 22 centuries of the pharaohs, and after Alexander, the Ptolemy, Caesar, Anthony, how do the men of the Reed lands exist? Now, I don't even know if they're true. Are they true? Do they really exist?
In that day, yes. From what I've read, yes.
It's a remarkable passage. How did you discover the idea of it? I didn't know anything about them.
Well, if you think about, I don't know, I don't even know where I've read it, but I mean, the flooding of the Nile, the annual flooding of the Nile, and produced harvests of grain that, basically could almost feed the world, and there were, tens of thousands of these agrarian guys that farmed that land, which is still true. What do they call it? The cultivation along the sides of the Nile.
Yeah.
And they had these reed boats that could, they drew so little water, they would have like a draft of, just inches, but they could carry massive loads of food and even the great stones, for the pyramids. So I've never really read an in-depth thing about it. A lot of it I just sort of invented.
Well, I can't imagine moving the stones on a reed. It's just one of the more interesting.
Well, remember, I know you've read Kon-Tiki, right? That
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yep.
So that was a great, incredible raft that these guys built and crossed the Pacific.
An engineering marvel.
Yeah.
I just, it's an aside that A Man at Arms is full of. Penultimate question. The trial scene, again, I won't give any details, in the ancestral village. I don't know why it's there. I know everything else about this book. I'm still thinking about the trial. Why did Stephen Pressfield divert to the trial scene? So just give me a hint.
I wanted to ground it back in the Greek world. Because we'd been in the Roman world, and we'd been in the Egyptian world, and the Jewish world, the Hebrew world, and I wanted to bring it back, and I particularly wanted to bring it back. This is not giving away too much to say that in this land where this trial takes place, the Olympian gods don't really matter as much as their predecessors, the Titans.
Yep.
And they are the people who live in this. They still kind of worship Prometheus and the Titans, and Kronos and the old gods, like they would say in Game of Thrones. So I just wanted to bring it back to that, to kind of ground the reader in Greece, because we were going to a climax in Greece.
Well, now let me conclude this way, Stephen. A Man at Arms is going to be a huge success, like all your other books. And you've had such a varied and diverse career, and people can go back and read our other interviews or listen to them about how you got into writing and the disciplines that you practice. Are you done? What are you going to do now for an encore if you're not done? I don't know what else there's. You've done the future, you've done the past, you've done every kind of conflict. You've even taken on golf. What are you going to do next?
Well, I'm never done, Hugh. I'm kind of like actors that when they get a role and the role's finished, they think, oh, I'm never going to be hired again. Nobody's ever going to want me again. And I sort of have that same thing when I finish a book. I say, am I ever going to have another book? But something always comes up. And so, yeah, we'll be back. You and I will be back talking again as long as you'll have me.
Oh, I love this. Bonus question, just indulge me. Of the degree of, I don't ask people what their favorite books are, because that doesn't make any sense, like asking your favorite children. But I do ask about degree of difficulty. If you ranked your books from the easiest to the most difficult to write, where does A Man at Arms come in?
It comes in as one of the easiest. And I've found, for whatever reason, that the books that were the easiest for me are the ones that are the best, and the ones that somehow seem to find an audience best. The ones that I've labored over and that have been like, working in the salt mines, never seem to, find an audience. But this one, it was ready to come. I believe in the muse, and the muse was ready to give it to me, and she did.
And I am grateful. I think A Man at Arms is going to find new audiences for Stephen Pressfield among Christian audiences that don't normally read this, among other faith groups that don't normally read in sort of the military warrior literature, and certainly among every other fan of Stephen Pressfield. Stephen, thank you, my friend. Great conversation. I look forward to the next one as always.
Well, thank you, Hugh. Like I say, it is always a joy to talk to you because you go in such depth and you're so present. So thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend. Be well.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.